Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yamin of Revolution. NATO troops killed in Iraq. What a shame. Iran attacks U.S. bases and a warship. But before we get into that, y'all be sure to wipe y'all feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, it's no good news for the U.S. and NATO. They are getting humiliated in the Middle East. Let's get right to the content. Salute.
So hundreds of thousands of people in the streets of Iran supporting the resistance, willing to sacrifice for the resistance. And all of that is evidence that the people are backing their country and their government in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Everything else is propaganda. The lies that they have been feeding the people for the past several decades. These are the people of Iran. Now, Iran also said that it took down an MQ-1 drone. Remember? We have evidence of that. Iran published this video of them targeting that American drone. Have a look. So that was the attack that Iran published. They also published, the IRGC said that the MSC Sariska has been struck by an Iranian anti-ship missile, and that the strike was in retaliation for a US strike on an Iranian vessel, according to Tasnim news agency. Let's have a look at the video that was published by the IRGC in that regard. So do you notice what we're seeing, by the way? We're seeing Iran attacking the United States as an act of genuine self-defense, not international state-sponsored terrorism like the United States and its Western counterparts do all across the globe. Terrorism, neo-colonialism, starvation, genocides, and mass slavery and child trafficking pedos. Iran is conducting acts of self-defense, and they're doing that with the United States. They're forcing the American president to concede, or at least try and concede, by having an attempt with the Israeli prime minister to reduce the attacks in Lebanon. They are, in essence, telling the whole world that they're backing the Palestinians. They're encouraging the Palestinians to resist. They're talking about complete liberation. They're talking about a Palestinian return. Iran's dictionary is unmatched by any other state officially in its entirety. I mean, of course, Yemen does that, Ansarullah, but that's the Ansarullah part of Yemen, not the Saudi-backed other part. As a state, Iran is the only one that has these statements exactly as they're talking. Return, liberation, support, resistance, defiance, honor, dignity. Everyone else tells you, oh yeah, we're willing to make peace. Just recognize the 1967 borders and we'll have peace with you, and we support. How many Arab and Muslim countries are sponsoring the ceasefire agreement in Gaza and this so-called board of peace? And how many breaches are there every single day? And what are they doing exactly? Nothing. Several countries are on that board, Arab and Muslim countries. But no, they'll tell you, oh, today there were reports that, oh, the Egyptian side is speaking with the French side so that they can speak with the American side to apply pressure on Donald Trump so that they can ask Benjamin Netanyahu not to attack. Other countries are talking about speaking to Trump and lobbying and trying to bring him on our side. And, you know, the foreign policy is hijacked by Israel and we'll try and convince him. One threat from Iran makes Donald Trump panic. And they're all going to lick his boots. What a state of humiliation. And what a state of honor for Iran to stand up against these barbaric child trafficking pedos and Zionist genocidal murderers in the clearest terms possible, in the clearest manner possible. And guess what? They proved that it works. I mean, if it didn't work, we'd have a different conversation. Iran proves that having self-defense measures, proper power, readiness, strategic power against your hostile adversaries works. They proved it. And on top of all of that, they're going to prove it again. Because all of this signals what exactly? It signals that we're on the doorstep of a large-scale war. Why? Whenever you ask yourself about the war, you need to remember one thing. What does Benjamin Netanyahu want? And what is his situation like? Benjamin Netanyahu wants to remain in power to avoid being put in prison. Benjamin Netanyahu wants an image of victory because in every poll in Israel, his coalition doesn't get a majority. He is unable to form a government. There are elections that he already said will be early elections, and he did not say when. Any concessions from Israel, any step back from Netanyahu, any killing, any this and that, that only harms him and his image and his statements about total and absolute victory. No one is convinced by that. But if he continues and if he tries to do something big, if he has a bigger attack, he ends it at that.
My bad, Charlie. Kick me out, man. I've been having some Wi-Fi situation. We back though. Give me a second.
get out of this more humiliated than ever and more defeated than ever. And this empire will bring itself closer to its demise. Right now, misinformation spreads faster than facts, especially
complete chaos is erupting in the Middle East as a United States soldier was just killed at an air base in northern Iraq. Also, a British soldier was just killed at an air base in northern Iraq. This follows reports that Iran had targeted areas in northern Iraq, likely Kurdish positions. The United States is claiming that the U.S. soldier died in a, quote, training incident, a military training accident. That's what the UK Ministry of Defense is also claiming. But both of these service member deaths that were just announced, quote unquote, training exercises took place at Erbil Air Base in northern Iraq at the exact same time it emerged that the Iranians had retaliated against U.S. violations of the ceasefire by targeting northern Iraq in that exact area. This is the statement from the U.S. Army. On May 31st, a U.S. Army soldier died during a military training accident at Erbil Air Base in Iraq. The training was conducted with our British Army partners who also lost a soldier. This from the British Ministry of Defense. It is with deep regret that we can confirm that a training accident occurred in northern Iraq on Sunday, May 31st, 2026. And as I noted, this was the exact area that Iran targeted after the United States targeted Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. Remember also that when Iran responded to U.S. airstrikes in the Strait of Hormuz a few days back, and Iran targeted an air base in Kuwait, and several service members and contractors from the United States were injured. Do you remember what they said also? They said that they weren't hit by the Iranian drones and missiles, but that it was caused from falling debris in the area. And it's like, stop the lies, stop the cover up. And we need to just get at the truth of what's happening here. Meanwhile, the IRGC Navy claimed responsibility for a cruise missile strike on the MSC Syriska, describing that in retaliation as well for the U.S. military strike on an Iranian vessel, the Lion Star, in the Oman Sea. The IRGC claimed that the MSC Syriska is America Zionist owned, and they released this video moments ago. Let's play it. Now, in response to Iran also saying that they were suspending all talks and negotiations with the United States as Israel threatened further incursions as part of its invasion in Lebanon, Donald Trump just responded as follows. There was a little glitch today. The Iranians were upset about Israel's attack on Lebanon. So I spoke with Hezbollah and said, Hezbollah, no shooting. And I talked to Bibi and I said, Bibi, no shooting. And they both stopped shooting each other. Donald Trump was asked by ABC why he hasn't signed the Iran MOU, Memorandum of Understanding it. Trump said, I'm still just trying to get a few more points. I think you're talking about over the next week, but we're getting what we need. We're getting closer. A peace agreement with Iran could be even better than a military victory, Donald Trump says, like he thinks we're all stupid. He's been saying this exact same thing since March. He then posted, talks are continuing at a rapid pace with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Meanwhile, Donald Trump then leaked to Axios Guess who? Barack Ravid the following. Donald, according to this leak, Trump told Netanyahu on a phone call today as follows. This is what the leak claims that Donald Trump said, but this could be more psychological warfare by trying to claim that Donald Trump was attacking Netanyahu when in fact they're still coordinating. According to Barack Ravid, Donald Trump told Netanyahu, quote, "You're fucking crazy. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me. I'm saving your ass. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this." That's what Barack Ravid claims that Donald Trump said to Netanyahu. It should be noted that the U.S. still has all of its Stratotankers, planes, and critical military equipment that it moved from its other bases in the Middle East to Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. Donald Trump posted the following about his conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu. He said, "I had a conversation with Bibi Netanyahu, asking him, don't go into a major raid of Beirut, Lebanon. He turned his troops around. Thank you, Bibi. I also had a conversation with representatives of leaders of Hezbollah, and they agreed to stop shooting at Israel and its soldiers. Likewise, Israel agreed to stop shooting at them. Let's see how long this lasts. Hopefully it will be for eternity." Donald J. Trump. You had the Israeli finance minister Smotrich post, "It's either us or them. There is no middle ground. We are killing the idea of a Palestinian state." You have Israel's national security minister Ben-Gvir post, "Mr. Prime Minister Netanyahu, you said that a strong prime minister tells the president of the United States yes when possible and no when necessary. This is a time to tell our friend President Trump no. Now is the time to do what is required and necessary to strike Hezbollah, to unleash the hands of our fighters, and to restore security to the north." Then Netanyahu posted he's still going into Beirut and southern Lebanon, and he said that basically nothing remains changed at all. And then you had Hezbollah also posting that it rejected the ceasefire proposal that Donald Trump claimed existed as unacceptable. So Netanyahu said this never happened. Hezbollah says this never happened, and both directly contradicting Donald Trump's narrative of what's happening. Meanwhile, Mark Levin, Donald Trump propagandist on state regime media, which calls itself Fox, here's what Mark Levin posted moments ago. "The leak in Axios was a violation of federal law and provided support to the Iranian regime and its Hezbollah proxy. Whoever leaked the story to Barack Ravid and Axios did a great disservice to our country, to our president, to Israel, and to Israel's prime minister." Is this all part of the kind of psyop as well? Like, we all know that the likely people who leaked it were, giving you my opinion, either Donald Trump, either Jared Kushner, or someone in their inner circle, obviously. "The Iranian regime will benefit from the leak, viewing us as weak and desperate for a deal." Pause. They already do view us as weak and desperate for a deal because Donald Trump's been acting weak and desperate for a deal since early March. He's been saying these things. "Even coming to Hezbollah's defense, the Israeli people will also be furious. The missiles are aimed at them, not Washington, and for 100 other reasons. What was thought to be a devastating political hit on Netanyahu by the leakers about a private call between the heads of state has done much damage to us and our military and our diplomatic strategy. And if the leakers or others believe Israel should abandon its survival for some deal, they will have a very hard lesson to learn. If the substance of the call is accurate, it's bad enough in my view. Will there be an FBI investigation to determine who leaked it? If not, why not?" Okay, you realize that the same people are leaking to Barack Ravid like every day, every 6 hours, in my opinion, manipulating markets. Barack Ravid denies that that's what's taking place, but he should at least know that he's being used for this purpose because it has that outcome, whether that's the intention or not. Meanwhile, you have a senior military official in Iran just announcing, in the event of a ceasefire violation by Israel in Lebanon, an established order in the Strait of Hormuz will also prevail in the Bab el-Mandab Strait in the Red Sea. Israel, we talked about Netanyahu's response. MB Ghalibaf, Iran's lead negotiator and parliament leader, said the following about his conversations with the president of Lebanon. "In my conversation with my brother, President Nabi Berri, I affirm that if the Israeli aggression against Lebanon continues, we will not only halt the path of negotiations, but we will also be in direct confrontation with the enemy. Long live the resistance, long live the defenses of the land, and long live the brotherhood between the Lebanese and Iranian people, is what he posted right there. Now, I also want to note that chaos is erupting in Ukraine as Russia's invasion continues to escalate. You remember Donald Trump promised on day one he would be able to create peace after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But here we are now into 2 years later or so, and that's not what happened. This is what Trump does. He lies and he drags things on over and over again. So a major ballistic missile attack is underway right now against the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. The operational command of the Polish armed forces has announced the scramble of Polish and NATO fighter jets, as well as command and control aircraft amidst an ongoing large-scale Russian drone and missile attack against Ukraine. In addition, ground-based air defense systems and radar reconnaissance have reached a state of maximum readiness throughout Poland. Multiple fires, as I'm recording this, are burning throughout the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv and several other cities across Ukraine amid a large-scale Russian ballistic missile attack, one of the most significant in months against Ukraine. I'll show you some B-roll right here of Ukrainian Patriot system intercepting a Russian Iskander missile before the impact in Kyiv. I'm going to play this for you about 7 or 8 seconds as Russia is heavily bombing Ukraine right now. You can see for yourself. Let's play it. Here's what the MAGA Republicans are saying upon their return to Capitol Hill. MAGA Republican Congress member Mast claims that Democrats are more dangerous than Iran to the United States. Okay, play this clip.
And the final piece of meat that I would put on that bone is this. The number 2 threat, aside from the IRGC, is this. It is Democrats in the House of Representatives. They are the second biggest Iranian proxy. They are doing everything that they can to prevent the president from reaching a long-lasting peace for decades to come with Iran. That is what's in the way.
And then I'll leave you with this post from Amelia. She writes, imagine if a woman president crashed the economy, started a war with no end in sight, and her biggest, seemingly only concern was building a ballroom and redecorating the White House. I leave you with that. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 7 million subscribers. This has been a big beginning to the week of subscription growth here on the Midas Touch Network. So please hit subscribe. Help us continue to grow. Double check that you're actually subscribed. We appreciate your support as always. Thanks for watching.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.
It looks like Trump's plan for Iran is deteriorating very quickly. It looks like Israel doesn't have any kind of backup plan except to drop bombs. And right now, America is caught in a catch-22. We have analysts warning that the oil price is about to double in the coming months, and that this whole war that Trump is waging on Iran, it's opening up a new front, and it's going to be one on the Strait of Tears. If you don't know, the other waterway on the other side of Yemen and Oman here is very critical as well. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait, also known as the Strait of Tears. This is an area that sees itself have 10% of the global oil pass through this area, plus all types of other goods, and it cuts a 2-week travel time off of any other route. This is a critical spot. And right now, Iran is saying, ceasefire's done. Like, you guys you did it in. You broke it again. You lied again, is what they're saying. They're saying that the attacks on Lebanon violate the ceasefire as well. They can't be hitting any of their allies, which is Yemen as well. So Iran is saying they're going to activate their Houthis now, all the rebels around Yemen, and that would make this whole spot that you see circled on the right here an obvious target. It's only 32 kilometers wide, and with Hormuz shut down and full of mines, it's going to take a while. They say it looks like at this rate, the analysts are saying, by August, oil will be 180 per barrel. Trump says, I'm not worried about it. I'm not going to worry about it. It's going to work itself out. I think the price will drop here very soon. He's been saying this for weeks. And like a carrot on a stick, he's been telling everyone that we'll have a deal here very soon, very soon. All the while, it's getting drug out and prices are inching higher and higher and higher. There's no other way around it. They're warning now that if this does not get fixed here very soon, that once again, oil will hit 180 a barrel by August, and this will send the entire globe into a recession. I'm going to tell you, that's what it was meant to do, that this is all part of a reset, and things are going to thin out before it gets any better, I feel. People can either have a plan or find out the hard way. But this is the latest. Join me for the live streams going live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, talking about updates to this and a lot more. Hope to see you there.
Moments ago, we've learned that Iran holds indirect talks and message exchanges with the United States. Citing, they're talking about Lebanon, and they said that as long as they have these sort of attacks on Lebanon and Gaza, there will be no talk between Iran and the United States. And what would be their Iran and the resistance front have also reported they want, if something goes on and if because Israeli wants to attack the southern part of Beirut in Dahieh, and there are many people there. Somehow it's impossible to evacuate all of those people in Dahieh. And they said, here is what Iran said about they're going to close all these choke points, the Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandab, all together, and everything gonna get back to what it was during the war. But the difference right now is going to be Bab el-Mandab going to join, and it means that Yemen is going to join the fight. Mm-hmm. Where are we headed, in your opinion, and what's going on in the West Asia?
Well, we need to cue up the old musical. Again, this is before you were born, The Music Man. We got trouble. We got trouble right here in River City.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we got trouble. Well, the entire, Israel has been violating the ceasefire now for 2 weeks, but it's like over the course of the last 5 days, it's gotten worse. They, because remember going back to April 14th, 15th, there was that initial ceasefire agreement between the United States and Iran. So basically U.S. initials stopped bombing Iran. And that was around April 7th, April 8th. And it took another 3 or 4 days before, the Iranian position was, hey, you've got to include Lebanon and the attacks on Palestinians. That's got to stop. So that went into effect I think that held for basically like 5 days, maybe a couple of weeks, and there were some abuses, violations of that ceasefire, but it's now there's no ceasefire. Israel's back at full-blown war, full attacks on Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is firing back with missiles, rockets, and drones into northern Israel. So that war that's back on full heat. And so with Iran taking this position, linking the two. And so that is what's so new about this whole situation, that the Iranians now are linking what goes on in Lebanon and in Israel to any kind of agreement with the United States. You can't separate them. You can't pretend, that this is just about a conflict between the United States and Iran. No. The lives of the Palestinians are also, at least Iran is the only country in the world standing up, trying to do something for those people. And now maybe the Houthis will join. We'll see.
Yeah. What do they have, Larry, in the Middle East if something happens between Iran and the United States? From the Iranian sources, I've learned that they have brought a lot of weapons to the Middle East, even more than what they had before the war started on February 28th. And this is one part, the offensive part, the offensive front.
Right.
On the defensive, we have to see the combination of the defensive capabilities and offensive capabilities. What do we have right now in the Middle East?
Well, there are reports that, and they're not public reports. Let me change that. I have been told by someone who has access, or let's call it a knowledgeable. It'll be referred to as a knowledgeable source with access, that China has provided Iran with, at a minimum, a supersonic anti-ship missile, but also apparently some other significant ballistic missiles that were not previously, they're solid fuel, which makes them easier to, load up and fire off. So yeah, Iran's in a position now with more weaponry than it had at the start of the war on February 28th. Let's think about it. We're looking at, so we had March, April. It's gone over more than 3 months now. 3 months and 2 days, and this is, one of the things that Iran didn't do much of during that first, really 7 weeks of the war, 5 weeks. They went because the missile exchanges were over a course of about 5-6 weeks, and then they got into the ceasefire, but did not aggressively go after the Israeli military airfields where these various planes are based. I wouldn't be surprised now to see that in this new phase. It's going to restart. It's going to restart this week. The United States is the attacks are going to step up on both shipping in the Persian Gulf. There will be attacks, I think, on U.S. naval vessels, and we're going to see, I think, more aggressive attacks by Iran on the airfields in Israel and in Jordan. So this is, I think the lull that we've had now going back, 8-9 weeks, that's over.
The question is, why does Israel need to attack Dahiya right now if the situation is going good in the southern part of Lebanon? If they're in a good position. And we've learned, Larry, from Hezbollah, they said an underground base belonging to Israel regime army. It says in this announcement by Hezbollah, in the occupied city of Tiberias, was targeted with rocket fire. And it seems that 137 officers and soldiers were injured in this attack, as reported by Hezbollah.
So Hezbollah is saying that they hit and inflicted casualties on 137 Israelis?
137, but it counts all in the last 2 weeks. It says
Okay.
137. It wasn't just one single attack.
Okay.
And it says 100. Yeah, that's the number for 2 weeks, and that's why many people are asking why does Israel need to attack Dahieh if they're doing great in the southern part of Lebanon, if they're crossing the Litani River? What is your answer to that?
Oh no, I have no answer to that. It is just their idea is to kill and destroy as much as they can, and they see the Dahieh as a stronghold for Hezbollah, and therefore for them killing women and children, there's no such thing as civilians as far as the Zionists are concerned. So they don't mind killing and flattening the area, just as they've done in Gaza. It is what the government of Israel has been doing is a war crime of the highest order. It needs to be stopped, but the world is standing by doing nothing. Unfortunately, that has been typical throughout history. I mean, the Israelis talk about the Holocaust and that, oh my God, that the Nazis tried to exterminate them, and the world knew about it, stood by and did nothing. The Houthis when they were attacked by the Tutsis in Rwanda, again a massive massacre, 1 million people at least. The world, sort of complained a bit about it, but didn't take any kind of action to stop it. And now we've got we're going on 2.5 years of Israel murdering Palestinian women and children, primarily, and killing doctors, killing journalists, killing aid workers, and they're allowed to show up in polite company at the United Nations. They should be thrown out. Shouldn't be allowed anywhere near it. Should be isolated. Should be treated like a plague. Instead, they go along with it, and then they get to go make their speeches at the UN and pretend that they're the victim.
Israeli media reported, Larry, that the United States has proposed an arrangement to Lebanon under which attacks on Beirut's southern suburbs, they're talking about Dahieh, would cease in exchange for Hezbollah refraining from targeting Israeli military forces in southern Lebanon. It somehow says it's just unbelievable what they're doing. They're occupying the southern part of Lebanon right now. They're saying we're gonna hit Beirut and the southern part of Beirut, but if you don't want us to attack you to destroy the civilians, and you have to stop attacking us in the southern part of Lebanon, which they're occupying.
Right.
How ridiculous is that? Who's gonna and Hezbollah rejected that. That's why.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, there's a Yiddish word for this, Chutzpah, chutzpah, or as Michelle Bachmann, a former congresswoman in the United States, she called it chutzpah. But that's what it is. It's pure chutzpah on the part of the Israelis. That's along the lines of the kid that kills his parents and then pleads for mercy from the judge. Judge, you can't prosecute me. I'm an orphan. Yeah, you're an orphan because you killed your parents, you bastard. So here's Israel looking for leniency in the course of when people are responding to their attacks, and it's quite understandable that I can understand why they'd ask that. And maybe their calculation was, hey, we asked, what's the worst going to happen? They'll say no.
I think the situation is getting so serious, Larry, and we're going to have this war breaking out again. Here is what one of the senior Iranian official said to the Fars News in Iran: the blood of a Palestinian equals to the blood of an an Iranian, the blood of a Lebanese equals to the blood of an Iranian, and Muslim community is one joint column, side by side in this battle. And they're not going to give up on what they're asking for from the United States. And I don't see Donald Trump having any sort of solution for what's going on, because he has not shown us any sort of leverage on Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, I'm hoping that Iran was able to play the stock market on this, do what Trump's been doing. So Trump, over the last, now we're going on 14 weeks, 13 weeks. What he would do is he would announce, hey, we got a peace agreement. It's, man, this should be signed any day now. We're close. We're so close. And as a result, what would happen? The price of oil would go down. The price in the stock market would go up. And so by shorting stocks or buying puts where you could profit off of these changes. So if I'm Iran, I'd start by, I'd set up a company where you can put, invest billions and just come out and say, nope, hey, the negotiations are off. In fact, we're getting ready to deploy a nuclear weapon. Oh, man, the stock market would go crazy. They could cash in on that, Now, I don't think they're doing that, but that would be, it's just a reminder that the other spillover effects of this conflict, that if you've been watching the U.S. stock market, it has been behaving as if there is an actual deal almost in the bag. It's close, so close. And, there have been some of us who are saying, no, that ain't happening. It's not true. Stop getting taken in by, this is another version of Donald Trump is like Lucy from the Charles Schultz, Charlie Brown cartoon. Lucy would hold out the football. Come on, Charlie, kick it. And Charlie would come running up and try to kick it. And, she'd pull the ball away. He'd fly up in the air and land on his ass. That's been Donald Trump. Now, 13 weeks. Oh, we got a deal. It's almost, man, we're close. We're close. Now, as Iran said, we're not even talking to the United States now. There's nothing to talk about until the issues of the Palestinians and the Lebanese are addressed. Have a nice day.
I think there is no way.
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Larry, I think there is no way to continue with the current situation in the West Asia, in the Persian Gulf, because we're having this blockade on Iran, and sooner or later they're gonna have some sort of confrontation and escalation, and that's gonna be the real war between Iran and the United States. Coming back to the main question, the same question that I asked before, you forgot to mention that in your response, which is the capabilities, defensive capabilities on the part of Israel. Let's assume the war starts again. Mm-hmm. And how is that going to be, how the United States going to be able to defend Israel?
Well, defend it with what? Air defense systems, for example?
With the Patriot system, we know that Iron Dome is failing, every time. They cannot intercept even these rockets from Hezbollah.
Yeah, the Iron Dome is designed to intercept, let's call them subsonic rockets. It is not designed to deal with supersonic or hypersonic ballistic missiles. The fact of the matter is, neither is the Patriot missile, the PAC-3. It's not. It's proven ineffective. But let's say it was effective. The United States doesn't have enough. They have effectively run out. It's just, all we can do is public accounting, and the total number of missiles in the U.S. inventory, the most generous assumptions would have put it over 6,000, about 6,400 at the end of 2025. So as of 5 months ago. Now, since then, they've probably added, again, to be generous, another 300, 60 per month, 5 months. Maybe, because the other, though, issue is China's cut off rare earth minerals, which are essential ingredients. It's like trying to bake a cake and not using any sugar or flour. You're not going to have a cake. So here's, but with that, 6,400, and then when you do the math, you've got to fire 2 Patriots at a minimum to intercept an incoming threat. So that means that 6,400 is capable of defeating 3,200 missiles fired. That's assuming that all of that was retained by the United States, except we know for a fact that at least 1,500 to 2,000 of those PAC-3 missiles went to foreign governments. Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Japan, Australia. So you subtract that. Well, now we're down to 4,400, which means, okay, we can intercept 2,200 missiles. Okay, how many? And we gave 1,000 in addition to the 2,000 sold to foreign governments. We gave another 1,000 to Ukraine. So that 1,000 missiles. That means they could intercept up to 500 incoming at targets by Russia. Well, hell, just last, was it a week ago? Russia fired equivalent of more than 500 missiles on one day. So you see, the numbers just don't add up. So this is they're living with the reality is that Israel and the United States do not have an effective air defense system. They don't have it. It does not exist.
We are following breaking developments out of Iran that can only be described as a catastrophic nightmare for the Trump administration. What the White House is desperately trying to spin as controlled retaliation has spiraled completely out of control, leaving American military power looking more exposed than at any point in the last 2 decades. The headlines breaking across international wires this morning are staggering. Reports are flooding in from Kuwait, confirming a devastating Iranian retaliation that has obliterated American aerial assets. After the United States Central Command, CENTCOM, once again violated the fragile ceasefire by launching unprovoked airstrikes on Iranian military installations, specifically targeting Iranian air defense radars and a telecommunications tower in the coastal county of Sirik, the Iranian military responded not with a slap on the wrist, but with a knockout punch. In the early hours of the morning, Iran's aerospace units launched a Fateh 110 ballistic missile directly toward the Ali al-Salem air base in Kuwait. Kuwaiti air defense systems managed to intercept the missile mid-flight, but the debris field from that intercepted projectile rained down directly onto the U.S.-operated section of the base. The results are devastating. Damage to at least 2 American MQ-9 Reaper drones, with those sophisticated aircraft valued at upwards of $30 million, each now reduced to smoldering scrap. Bloomberg and other international outlets are confirming that approximately 5 American military personnel and contractors sustained injuries in the strike. Make no mistake, the Iranian military sent a deliberate message here, a precise warning that the days of hitting Iranian soil without facing immediate and severe consequences are over. This is not just another skirmish in a forgotten corner of the world. This is the sound of Donald Trump's disastrous Middle East policy crashing down around him. The strike on Sirak was a blatant violation of any pretense of peace. Washington claims it was acting in self-defense after Iran downed an American MQ-1 drone over what they say were international waters, but let's be honest with ourselves. The American military has been playing a game of hide and seek against Iranian forces for months now, hoping to degrade Tehran's capabilities without triggering a full-blown regional inferno. And that game has failed. It failed the moment that Fateh 110 missile left the launch pad. The Iranian armed forces warned that any repetition of aggression would be met with a completely different response. That warning has now been delivered in the most undeniable terms possible. We are looking at a situation where the United States finds itself trapped in a quagmire of its own making, having assassinated Iranian commanders, torn up diplomatic agreements, and yet utterly failed to achieve a single strategic objective, either through conventional war or through targeted killings. If this coverage is providing you with the kind of hard-hitting, unfiltered truth that the corporate media is too afraid to touch, we need you to take 1 second right now to hit that like button. Share this video with every American who is tired of seeing their tax dollars burned in the desert for the sake of foreign wars. Do me a favor right now, drop a comment, even if it is just a dot. Or better yet, tell the world what you think about Trump's catastrophic war machine. That simple act of engagement is the only thing that keeps this channel alive and pushes back against the suppression of independent voices. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, hit that subscribe button because honest journalism is under assault, and we refuse to bow to the propaganda of empire. Now let's get into the weeds of what is really happening here, because the mainstream headlines are burying the lead. The sequence of events is crucial to understanding who the real aggressor is here. On one hand, Washington has been publicly posturing about a deal, about extending the ceasefire, and about the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. But on the ground, their actions tell a completely different story. The American strikes on Qeshm Island and the Gorok region specifically targeted Iranian air defense radars. That is a classic precursor to a wider aerial campaign, an attempt to blind the Iranian military before the occupation forces try to escalate the bombing of the Lebanese resistance or before they try to flex their muscles in the strait. The United States was simultaneously attempting to quietly escort military ships through the Strait of Hormuz, probing Iranian defenses to see how hard they would push back. And they got their answer, harder than they ever anticipated. When Washington struck that telecommunications tower in Sirak County, they crossed a line. The Iranian military did not wait for a committee or a press release. They responded in kind almost instantly, launching not just random artillery, but a precision ballistic missile against the base that launched the aggression. The use of a Fateh 110 is significant here. This is a road mobile missile known for its pinpoint accuracy. Even though the Kuwaiti defenses intercepted it, the fact that Iran launched a ballistic missile at a U.S. base inside a U.S.-aligned Gulf state demonstrates an extraordinary level of risk tolerance and strategic defiance. And this brings us to the uncomfortable truth that Donald Trump does not want you to understand. Why is the president stalling on a deal? For weeks, we have heard whispers that a memorandum of understanding was on the table, a 60-day extension of the ceasefire, a potential reopening of the strait. Yet every time the finish line appears, Trump pulls back, demanding edits, asking for stronger guarantees, moving the goalposts. The answer is not in Washington. The answer is not even in Tehran. The answer is in the rubble of Beirut and the occupied Palestinian territories currently being ethnically cleansed by the occupation forces. This entire diplomatic farce is a game of chicken, a calculated delay designed to buy time for the occupation military. While Donald Trump pretends to negotiate with Iran, he is giving the occupation regime the green light to seize more territory and obliterate Beirut. The longer Trump stalls, the more time the occupation forces have to destroy the Lebanese resistance. Trump is trying to give the occupation regime the opportunity to achieve its military objectives, to cripple its enemies in Lebanon, while simultaneously trying to keep Iran from delivering a massive, crushing blow against the occupation war machine. It is a high wire act, but the wire is fraying fast. And it reminds me of Fareed's take on this Iranian quagmire.
Why is the most powerful country on the planet unable to get its way with a much smaller, weaker country that has been ravaged by economic sanctions and military strikes? At one level, the simplest way to understand America's problem in the Iran war is to use game theory. Donald Trump decided to play a game of chicken with Iran. Think of two drivers racing straight at each other. In these situations, if the stakes for one side are existential and for the other much lower, the side with those bigger stakes usually prevails. For the Iranian regime, if they lose, there's a good chance they end up toppled and slaughtered. For Trump, it would be a bad weekend at Mar-a-Lago. It's easy to see why the Iranians would be more willing to lock their steering wheel in that game of chicken. But there's a broader reason why America has found it so difficult to handle Iran, one that is not just about Trump and this latest ill-conceived war. Ever since the Islamic regime took power in Iran, America has been of two minds about it. On the one hand, the U.S. has had certain issues it wanted resolved, from the return of the hostages to nuclear limits. On the other hand, it wants to topple the regime, not just negotiate with it. There is a tension in these two attitudes that has run through American foreign policy for almost half a century. Does Washington want to change certain policies of Iran, or does it want to change Iran? If Washington negotiates with Tehran, inevitably there is give and take. There are concessions on both sides. There is some relaxation of hostilities. Above all, in engaging with it, the United States government is conferring a certain degree of legitimacy on the Islamic Republic, treating it as a serious negotiating partner, accepting that it represents Iran on the world stage. But that acceptance sits uneasily with some American elites who feel that the Islamic Republic is illegitimate, should not exist, and Washington's only policy toward it should be to overthrow it. And yet there are things Washington wants that only Iran can deliver. That is why even Ronald Reagan found himself secretly negotiating with the Iranian mullahs while publicly denouncing them. We can see the tension almost daily in Donald Trump's policy toward Iran. One social media post threatens to destroy Iranian civilization and bring an end to 47 years of evil. Another one that same day speaks of the progress being made in negotiations with Iran. Trump enters negotiations and seems optimistic about a deal with Iran, and in between rounds starts a war with Tehran and urges Iranians to overthrow their government. Less than a week later, he's back to promising that if they agree to his demands, Iran will have a very bright future. America had a similarly contradictory attitude toward the Soviet Union. After the communists took control of Russia in 1917, Washington broke relations with it and even tried in some small ways to overthrow it.
The calculus is as cynical as it is transparent. The United States keeps Iran busy with ceasefire talks and limited skirmishes in the Gulf. The occupation forces level entire apartment blocks in the southern suburbs of Beirut. Iran warns of an overwhelming response if the resistance collapses, but Tehran is restrained for now because no one wants a full-scale war with the nuclear-armed occupation regime, so Trump pushes the boundaries. He assassinates a general here, bombs a radar there, hoping to degrade Iran just enough so that when the ceasefire finally collapses, the occupation will have already won its land grabs. But here's the problem with that strategy for the White House. Iran is not playing along. Now let's bring this disaster home, because the fallout is not just happening on the sands of Kuwait. It is happening at the gas pump in Ohio and the checkout line in Texas. The American public is waking up to the reality that Donald Trump sold them a bill of goods. He promised to end endless wars. He promised to bring down prices. Instead, he has delivered the most expensive, embarrassing, and strategically pointless conflict since Vietnam. The numbers coming out of the political polling are nothing short of devastating for the GOP. The CNN projections and the data aggregates are showing a clear trend. The Democrats are poised for a massive wave in the midterms. A generic ballot test currently shows Democrats holding a 10-point advantage over Republicans. That is a landslide indicator. The war is unpopular, the economy is tanking, and the man in charge looks incompetent as his aircraft get blown up on foreign runways.
Hey friends, it's me, Harry Yenton, and today we're discussing how Democrats and why Democrats are in their strongest position in decades. I dare say it's a historic position heading into a midterm election. And if you stay tuned till the end, we'll talk about Donald Trump and how he's in a historic position as well, and how that is fueling Democrats in the midterm opportunities. But let's start off with the economy, because as Jimmy Carville is fond of saying, it's the economy, stupid. And in the case of you, the audience, it's the economy, smarty pants. And this number really just jumps off the screen, because take a look here. When you poll Americans on how they feel about the current and future economy, we get the worst ever consumer sentiment ever. And this measure has been taken since the mid-20th century. And of course, we are now in the 21st century. It is down, get this, 38% since the start of Trump's term, all the way back in January of 2025, just a massive decline. And this is fueling Democrats. It's fueling Democrats on the most simple of questions. That is, you identify as a Democrat, Republican, independent, etc. And when we allocate those independents, look at this, to the Democrats, Republicans. Democrats right now have a 13-point lead. A 13-point lead on Republicans on this most basic of measure. And when we look back at prior midterm cycles, at this point, this 13-point lead is bigger than any in at least 20 years. It even beats 2006, when Democrats easily took back the U.S. House of Representatives and gained 6 Senate seats, which if it happened this year, Democrats would be, yeah, that is perfect for us. We would take back the Senate as well. Now, when you look at this party ID lead, this is fueled in part by the simplest of questions. What's the most important problem the country is facing in your mind, and who do you trust to solve it? Well, right now, Democrats, hello, it's that same 13 points. It's that same 13-point lead that Democrats have over Republicans on which party they trust more to handle the top issue. And that, look at this. This really tells the story. Look at 2022. Republicans were trusted more by 11 points, more by 11 points. This is the inverse of that. This lead, this 13-point lead, look at, this green line. This is very similar to what we saw all the way back in 2006, which I said is exactly what Democrats want to happen, right? Take back not just the House, but take back the United States Senate as well. These figures, very similar, and this very much unlike anything else on your screen. But when you put it all together, the simplest of questions, who are you going to vote for, Democrats or Republicans in the midterms? Well, what are we dealing with? Well, at this point in midterm cycles, Democrats right now have a 7-point advantage, and that is, again, the strongest that they have had. You got to go all the way back to 2006 when Democrats held an 11-point lead. But this 7 points, look at this. It's more than double what Democrats had in 2018, when, of course, they were able to take back the U.S. House, gaining about 40 seats, maybe 41, depending on how you measure it. But the bottom line is you don't have to worry yourself with the details. That's my concern.
We also have to look at the spectacular failure of the naval blockade, because this is the part of the story that exposes just how little the Trump administration understands about modern geopolitics. The entire premise of the American strategy was to squeeze Iran economically, to close the Strait of Hormuz to Iranian oil, and to force Tehran to capitulate. The United States committed dozens of naval assets to intercept tankers, to redirect shipping, to strangle the Iranian economy. But Iran has done something remarkable. They have outsmarted the United States Navy. I want you to visualize this, because it is a stunning reversal of fortune. As American warships sit in the Gulf waiting for oil tankers that will never come, Iran has turned to its land borders and its rail infrastructure to bypass the blockade entirely. The numbers are concrete. According to reports from Iran's Oil Exporters Union and verified by satellite imagery, China is currently buying approximately 90% of Iran's oil supplies. And they are not sending supertankers through the Strait of Hormuz. They are sending trains. The 400-kilometer China-Iran railway corridor, which became fully operational in 2025, has been running at full tilt. Before the war, there was roughly 1 freight train per week traveling from China to Iran. Now, trains are running every 3 to 4 days. That rail link connects Xi'an in China to Tehran through Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, cutting transit time from a month by sea to around 15 days by land. The Iranian military is not just fighting in the air and sea. They have created an economic circulatory system that avoids American trigger fingers entirely. The implications of this are massive. The Trump administration promised a blockade that would bring Iran to its knees. Instead, Iran has pivoted its oil exports to its largest customer using infrastructure that the United States cannot legally touch without starting a war with multiple Central Asian states and China. American warships cannot stop a train crossing the border from Pakistan. They cannot sink a truck crossing into Turkey. The Strait of Hormuz closure was supposed to be the killing blow, the lever that forces Tehran to surrender its nuclear ambitions and its regional alliances. Instead, that lever has snapped in Washington's hands. Iran is still selling oil. The resistance in Lebanon is still being supplied. The occupation forces are still facing daily attrition. And Donald Trump is left standing on the deck of a warship, pointing at empty water, trying to claim victory.
Another point I would like to emphasize and make available to the audience, something that it would be breaking news, that Mojtaba Khamenei, son of the previous supreme leader, has said that if push comes to shove, make the nuclear bomb, 2 weeks. They need 2 weeks to do that. And he has also said that if we get attacked, and it's a matter of our life or death, the fatwa is changed, you can use it.
This is extremely important for several reasons. One of them, the Khamenei doctrine that a nuclear bomb is anti-Islamic.
Yeah,
it's over.
It's completely over. Good evening. I'm Zulfikar Ali. For more than 4 decades, I have worked inside the machinery of global finance. That experience taught me one thing very clearly. Power is not only declared in speeches, summits, or headlines. Power moves through currencies, payment systems, energy corridors, sanctions, capital flows, intelligence channels, and the quiet architecture behind public events. You have been told the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz is just another regional flare-up. Dangerous, but contained. That is absolutely false. What we are watching is not a crisis, it is a rupture. Iran has drawn a red line. Pakistan has become the critical back channel between Tehran and Washington. China is no longer observing from the sidelines. Joining this project are voices with serious reach and hard-earned authority. Larry Johnson, with decades inside the CIA and U.S. National Security Order. Pepe Escobar, a global correspondent with deep access across Beijing, Russia, West Asia, and the rising multipolar world. Welcome to the inaugural broadcast of a show that will change the way the news is delivered and the news is consumed.
Iran was going to withdraw from the negotiations.
And he was absolutely on point.
And what happened today?
What happened today? Exactly. Yeah.
So we go, check.
You bet.
And with that withdrawal from negotiations, and let's talk about that a bit before we get to the real, what I call ball breaking news.
Excellent.
The fact that they said, my understanding is Iran said 3 things. The fighting has got to stop in Lebanon. It's got to stop in Palestine against the Palestinians, and the blockade's got to be lifted.
Exactly.
And until that, no talks.
And they have been saying this over and over again. These are the three top demands. After that, we're going to start talking about the nuclear dossier.
Right.
If I can interrupt, you're
Please.
talking about a gentleman who is my source, and I have made numerous attempts to be in touch with this particular gentleman because many times he's not available, but he has his deputies who have 2 stars on their shoulders call me, so they are not, they're not clerks. And because this was our inaugural show, and because I have such great respect for both you and for Larry, and this is genuine respect, I did not want even an iota of the information that I passed to you to be anything other than words out of the horse's mouth, the right horse, and he confirmed that to me. He said, not only are these words out of the horse's mouth, but you will never get anything else from me. And our objective is to get the truth out, to raise the profile of Pakistan, West Asia, in the world, so that as the global north goes down, global south goes up. And he made a particular point of saying that anything Pakistan does is on behalf of China.
Yeah.
So Pakistan is not acting on its own.
No, they can't, because they don't have the leeway to act by themselves.
Of course not.
And of course, this is part of the Chinese in the back. They are specialists of being in the background and coordinating extensively in the background. And the Chinese never expose themselves directly.
Well, and the other, let's call it another sort of corroboration of this information, that, we're told in that information that this was communicated to Marco Rubio by the Pakistani foreign minister.
Yes.
And I remarked at the time that Marco Rubio probably had to have an underwear change after getting that information.
Excellent.
So and why I said we got some indirect corroboration of that is this morning when this information came out about the suspension of negotiations about 10 a.m. Eastern time. Trump didn't wait an hour before he was on the phone with Bibi.
Right.
And now we get 2 different stories of what happened out of that phone call. I think Trump read the riot act to Bibi and said, stop. Bibi comes out and, has his different spin. But in that particular tweet or Truth Social post that Trump announced it, he didn't go into all this, crap about, thank you for paying, thank you for your attention to this message. None of that nonsense. It was sort of boom, 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 direct.
Mm-hmm.
Now, his claim that he talked to Hezbollah, I do not believe for a second.
No, but this is completely absurd, Larry. We know this is absurd.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know who to call in Beirut.
Yeah. So, and then the follow-up comment by this IRGC official, where he said that based on Netanyahu's comments, that the inhabitants of the northern occupied territory, northern Israel, you need to get out because Iran is going to hit military targets and military personnel. So I went, whoa, so this is now gone in. This is now, I want your view, Pepe, but I'm seeing now that Iran said, okay, we're done with this process.
Yes, true. And they were remarkably patient. The back and forth with our Pakistani friends being the mediators lasted too long, in fact. fact. And the Iranians had to reaffirm over and over again the order of the procedure. First, you stop all wars. That includes the war against Lebanon. Then we discuss the Strait of Hormuz. And the third and last stage, we discuss the nuclear dossier. This has not changed for weeks. Right. And they had to explain this over and over and over again. So obviously, after what happened last week, which we should discuss live, the incident near Bandar Abbas, and then the Americans bombing Qashm, and then the Iranian response in the Kuwaiti air base. This was them sending a warning. Look, our patience has limits. And today, Mohsen Rezai, the top military advisor to Mojtaba Khamenei, said, look, our patience has limits. That's exactly what he said. And what happened today is the illustration that it has reached the limit already.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I would like to interject at this point is that he is not acting alone, the military advisor. He is, I mean, this is part of intelligence that I'm providing to you and that I'm providing to our audience who will listen to us and distinguish our show that way. He is being advised by somebody who he highly respects. He is the chief of Pakistani military forces. He's a field marshal. His name is Asim Munir. And he has a direct link.
Advised by Asim Munir, right?
Yeah, a direct link. He has a direct link to the supreme leader, and through his good graces to the head of IRGC and the political leadership. And that is how this has come about. So I would like to invite you, Pepe, or Larry, or both, to break the big news that I gave you from the source, because the world needs to know where this thing stands.
Well, that's why I wanted to emphasize. He said three things, and so I'll list those three. And or would you prefer to do it, Pepe? I don't want to steal.
No, go ahead, Larry, and I'll complement something.
Okay. So the three elements were withdrawal from the process. Bing, that happened today. Second, withdrawal from the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Third, a demonstration of a nuclear device, an explosion, not an attack on anyone, but a way of saying we got the bomb. Now, within that, the question is, and I'd asked Zulfikar this and he wasn't sure. Did Iran build it itself? Or are they getting it as a gift from? Is it Pakistan? Is it North Korea? Is it China? Is it somebody else? That's what we don't know. But
that's what we don't know.
Exactly. I have an answer for that, since you asked me that question, Larry, because I posed that question to our contact. And our contact said that there, again, breaking news, that the actual know-how came from Russia, not China, not Pakistan, but Russia.
Not necessarily mean that Russia built it.
No, Russia did not build it. Russia gave them the know-how.
Acquired the knowledge from Russia.
Correct.
But also, don't forget that for years, Iran was acquiring knowledge from North Korea. When I went to Iran in some of my trips, there were North Korean delegations there. And there was a back and forth of North Korean delegations from Pyongyang to Tehran throughout the 2010s, practically non-stop. And obviously, the North Koreans in Iran never talk to anybody. They only talk to themselves. I remember in one conference, 2 or 3 of us, I said, let's try to talk to the North Koreans. Absolutely out of the question.
another point I would like to emphasize and make available to the audience, something that it would be breaking news, that Mujtaba Khamenei, son of the previous supreme leader, has said that if push comes to shove, make the nuclear bomb, 2 weeks. They need 2 weeks to do that. And he has also said that if we get attacked, and it's a matter of our life or death, the fatwa is changed, you can use it.
This is extremely important for several reasons. One of them, the Khamenei doctrine that a nuclear bomb is anti-Islamic.
Yeah,
it's over.
It's completely over.
Number two, why Mujtaba is, let's say, giving the green light under a certain number of very serious conditions. First of all, because he is very good at reading the chessboard, something that he inherited from his dad. Number two, he knows that nowadays this is a mega extra leverage for Iran that they didn't need to use before, according basically to Shiite theology. But now we are in an existential war. So bye-bye Shiite theology. It's a matter of a resistance, sovereign resistance, and Iran is under an existential threat by US, Israel. So that changes completely. And third, he is already establishing his own legacy, building on his father's name and accomplishments, but he is his own man. And absolutely. Number four, very, very important, he was always very, very close to the IRGC leadership.
Yes.
They trust each other completely, because the key interlocutor between his dad and the IRGC leadership was Mujtaba for, if I'm not mistaken, 12, 13, 14 years, maybe 17 years, for a long time.
Yes, and I don't think that we should de-emphasize the extraordinary. I mean, it's really extraordinary because I'm a witness to it, and that's the reason I am able to see that. I would say the full support of the Pakistani military forces, which are very, very significant, and they are the dominant forces in the region. A decision made by China 4 or 5 years ago was proven against India. Very close. And the Pakistani Prime Minister has completely opened all the gates for all kinds of humanitarian aid to go through Balochistan and Bandar and Gawadar, from Gawadar to Chabahar.
And this is immensely important, Larry and Zulfikar. All of us who follow that part of the world, which is fascinating for several aspects, historical, cultural. Alexander the Great used to travel in those areas. Sistan Balochistan in Iran and Balochistan in southern Balochistan in Pakistan, including Gwadar Port. Yes. Now they are sister ports. You Correct. Could never imagine this 3 months ago. It's fascinating because it's. I never cease to talk about it in everywhere that I go. I was in Chabahar last year. We were shooting a documentary on the international north-south transportation corridor, which is Russia, Iran, India. And in Chabahar, I talked to. It was great because we had. Green light to talk to everybody, all the authorities, etc. So we got a special tour of Chabahar. And I was talking to engineers in Chabahar, and we were talking also about Gwadar. And I asked them, look, the Pakistani port, Gwadar, is 80 kilometers from here. They are your neighbors. Do you see them as competitors? And at the time, they were saying, well, it's different because our port is part of this corridor. International north-south, so Russia, Iran, India. And their port is part of the Chinese New Silk Roads, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. But now we see this merging because Iran is using Gwadar as if it's an Iranian port, and the Iranian ports are blockaded, as Larry knows very, very well, by that man in Mar-a-Lago and Washington. So what the Pakistanis did, okay, we merged the ports. It's our mutual interest. It's good for China as well, because the Chinese are looking at Chabahar and say, ha, maybe sooner or later, this is going to be another one of our ports to do trade with Afghanistan, because from Chabahar to Afghanistan is 200 kilometers, and from Afghanistan you go all over Central Asia. So Absolutely. They are systems, and they are part of this overland maritime connection between Iran and Pakistan. So from a geoeconomic point of view, this is like, wow, it's a marvelous New York cheesecake, you know.
I will break another news right now, okay? I mean, from my personal direct knowledge, a person who has the rank of an admiral, okay, very, very high up, he has been for the last month and a half in Pakistani naval ships, very advanced, making all the rounds of Chabahar and Gwadar, along with his Iranian counterparts.
Wow, that's huge. That's enormous.
Yeah,
that's enormous.
And
it proves the interconnection.
Yeah,
in every level.
I wanted to support what you just said. I mean, a lot of the news that I'm getting, I'm only now beginning to share with you, because I was very reluctant to do so.
Sure.
And then I decided that you two were the right kind of people with whom this information could be shared, and through you to the rest of the world. But I can absolutely attest to this fact, because this gentleman is also a very, 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 very close friend of mine. He is an admiral, full admiral. And he has been, Pakistan has gotten some very latest ships from China. He has been for the last 6 weeks, constantly between Gwadar, Chabahar, Bandar Abbas, making all those rounds. And when the admiral goes, it's just not one ship, it's a bunch of ships.
Mm-hmm.
And
Larry?
And his news is that this is completely open to Iranians.
I have a question to Larry. I loved your metaphor about Rubio, but would you say that Rubio actually understood the message coming from Pakistan's Sharif? And was he able to actually impart to Trump the seriousness of it all?
I think Rubio understood the seriousness of it. And actually, I think Trump grasped that as well by simply pointing out how quickly, once Iran announced it, they didn't have to spend hours debating, well, what does this mean? Instead, okay, that's item one on what they told us was going to happen. So now let's see, do they sign off? Do they now bow out of the NPT? And then if they do that, then we got a week. So, it's moving methodically along. I also saw in the news, and I don't know if you saw it, about 2 hours ago, Iran fired an anti-ship missile at a U.S. ship.
I see.
Yeah, so initially I thought that this would be confined to just going after Israel, but I think now Iran is going to do everything to lift the blockade.
Exactly, which is something that they were, once again, they were telegraphing this weeks ago already.
Yeah.
If they break the ceasefire, we will respond immediately, and it's going to be much more hardcore than before. If we confirm this missile against a U.S. military vessel, this might be the beginning.
Well, and this is also then in line with what the source with Zulfikar's source has told him. that Qatar and Saudi Arabia are moving outside of the U.S. security umbrella, moving into a security umbrella that's guaranteed by China, Russia, and Pakistan.
Absolutely,
Yes.
Absolutely guaranteed. 100%. I heard it from the man's lips.
Okay, Zulfikar, first question to you. Very, very important.
Yes.
Do you perceive some sort of hidden agenda from the Saudis that they might be using Pakistan to get closer and closer to Iran, but they want to use that for their own purposes later on in terms of a Pakistani security umbrella, which is included in the Saudi-Pakistani military pact?
I have direct news for you. I did not share, as you can see now. I'm giving out a lot more very close information. See, somehow after the clash with India, the Operation Sindoor, where India had thought that by acquiring the Rafales, that they were going to be so invincible and they were going to do so many things to Pakistan. And within minutes, India was, gone. A tremendous amount of respect developed in China as well, because the Chinese technicians were in Pakistan. I can guarantee you that. I know that for a fact. They reported to China, Saudis, all these Gulf countries. So Pakistan has been playing a big role in bringing Saudi Arabia and Iran together. And it will be, in my view, from what I heard, a matter of 6 to 9 months where there will be significant movement between Pakistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, some Central Asian countries like Azerbaijan and Turkey, and also, very interestingly, Egypt.
Well, but 4 of them, they were, I would say, a budding sort of axis, even before the Islamabad one face-to-face, indirect face-to-face between the Americans and Iranians. Because the first meeting was Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt.
Correct.
And then the next day, the Pakistani foreign minister went to China to talk to Wang Yi in person.
Yes.
And obviously Wang Yi asked him, okay, what did you talk about in Islamabad? Okay, give me solid results. At the time, there was nothing exactly solid. But China was backing already these 4 Sunnis.
Well,
very important.
I mean, this is not news for people like yourself. Pakistan and China are like brothers, not even brothers from different fathers or different mothers, but brothers. They are so close. Pakistan does not even cough without letting China know that, oh, I had a cough. So all of this is really driven by China, and all of this is a plan by China, which is being executed every single day that you see, to become the dominant power, but not the hegemon, like the U.S. has been in South Asia and Global South.
No, because the Chinese focus is geoeconomics and Eurasia integration on a trade manner.
But the dominant player, but not the hegemon. Okay, not the hegemon.
No,
and the U.S. is gone. and the U.S. is gone.
No, the West is being expelled from Eurasia, little by little, slowly but surely, and lately more surely than slowly.
And it will come very quickly at some stage. It will come very quickly.
I was going to say the one dimension of this that is not being, I think, fully captured, and not by you gentlemen, but the economic dimension of what the world is going through without realizing what it's going through. We don't have, there is no event that we can point to in history that is like what we're experiencing right now. And at least never in the history of the modern world. And I asked Professor Glenn Deason, he's a historian. I said, hey, Glenn, can you think of one event where you've lost 20% of the world's supply of oil, shut down, 25% of the world's supply of liquid natural gas, 35% of the world's supply of urea, sulfur, 44% of the supply of helium. And those, the oil and liquid natural gas part, they affect industrial activities. The urea and sulfur, they affect both fertilizer, crop growth, as well as some the sulfuric acid goes into a whole metallurgy. And then the helium, this is the one that I think is so unappreciated right now because of its role in the manufacture of computer chips. So, because what is the world seized with now? AI, artificial intelligence. And to do that, you've got to have data centers. And if you got data centers, that means there are computers in those data centers. And last I checked, inside those computers, these things called computer chips. So now all of a sudden, a key ingredient for producing those chips is no longer available, which means you're not producing as many chips, but you got this growing demand for the chips, but a shrinking amount of it, except China is now in a position where they're producing a lot more chips.
Exactly.
So, I mean, what we're witnessing is this whole geopolitical upheaval that is now taking place with Iran and with Pakistan and with Turkey and Egypt and China behind the scenes. And it's all taking place against this whole panorama of, I don't know what let's call it an economic tsunami that I don't think most countries in the world actually have felt the pain that's going to come yet, much less appreciated the dimensions of it. You think I'm missing? You think I'm exaggerating?
Larry,
No,
you're not exaggerating.
It's very obvious in a few weeks from now.
If you would allow me, I will say what I wanted to say. I thought a lot about coming to you guys with the information that I had before I made the decision to do so. Because I have known these individuals for a very long time, decades that is, and I've been privy to some information. So the reason I did that, Larry, is that for the precise reason that you just mentioned, the world is not going to be the same 6 months from today, Larry. No questions about that. No questions about that. 9 months from today, for sure, it will not be the same. And the sooner that people begin to understand that, the better they will be protecting themselves. The world is changing dramatically. And Trump cannot keep up with what he is doing. There is no way Trump can continue with this. He is going to he's going to have his back to the wall. He's not going to have weapons, and people will be on his throat because he would have deprived them of fertilizer, helium, all kinds of stuff. Do I say that exaggerated? Pepe?
No. But this goes way beyond. He's just a minor cog in this gigantic wheel. He's, in fact, I would say he's a side character in a much, much bigger Shakespearean play. He's not even the main character. He's a side character. The problem is one fateful decision, the turn of this, I would say, demented wheel. Now it's unstoppable. He was not even consciously thinking about the consequences when he took the decision. And Larry can talk about this in detail. Because, of course, first of all, he's not a strategic thinker. He's not a thinker to start with. He's not a strategist. He doesn't read. He doesn't understand the notion of critical thinking and comparing schools of thought or concepts, and forget it. It's basically an immediate result that could be good for himself, his cronies, or whatever. Okay, I'll launch a war. It's going to last 1 weekend. On Monday, I proclaim victory. Stock markets are going to explode, and that's it. And another adventure. That's it. And
that's what he thought.
But Zulfikar and Larry, there was not a single soul around his extremely mediocre cycle to say, don't mess with the Persians. It takes 10 minutes of studying history to understand that. Nobody could tell. It's not very complicated.
Now, I was wondering, so we've seen how Trump over the last, so we're in week 13, week 14 of the war, how Trump has manipulated the stock market and the oil market to the financial benefit of his family. And then I started thinking, you know what? I wonder if Iran has set up a company that's doing it, because Iran could, like today, hey, you know what? We're pulling out, no more negotiations. And then what happens? That way they could make some more money on the side. And I don't think they'll, they can't get prosecuted in the United States for stock manipulation or whatever, because insider trading, because they're outside. Mm-hmm. I just, that thought crossed my mind.
Excellent.
Larry, I have to ask you, I came from Pakistan, even though many years ago, but I still have that ethnicity. And Pepe, is from Brazil, even though he travels the world, but you are a native-born American, son of the soil.
Yep.
And you served in the CIA. You served this country. And now you see just complete assholes, dismantling it. Just complete assholes. The debt is $40 trillion, supported by the petrodollar. This is something I know very well. And soon the petrodollar is not going to be able to support it. Very soon.
And what troubles me, and I was sharing this with someone else earlier. I look back. I have to look back on history now in a different way. When I was contemporary with Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait, even though I had worked at the CIA, I did not have the information that the CIA was the one that was providing Saddam Hussein with the precursor chemicals for making the mustard gas and for making sarin and G, nerve agents, that they were the ones providing Iraq with biological agents, that it was the United States government policy to provide Saddam with the intelligence that could be used to attack and kill Iranians. And it was, without that knowledge, and then never quite understand, it didn't understand until more recently that the CIA continued to have that close relationship, not just with Saddam. but with key members of his military and key members throughout Iraqi society. It was the United States and Iraq knew each other. It wasn't just some sort of superficial thing. And then, the end of 86, start of 87, Saddam Hussein gets pissed off at the CIA because he discovers basically that we're cheating on him. We're sleeping with the Iranians. In fact, we're giving the Iranians weapons that they're using to kill Iraqis. And so he said, no more with the CIA. He wouldn't deal with them. He would deal only then with this U.S. Army colonel by the name of Pat Lang, Walter Patrick Lang, who happened to have been a friend of mine for 25 years before he passed. So I got some of the inside information about here was Pat hand carrying that intelligence for the last 2 years of the war. My point in this is the way the average American is taught history is it doesn't include this nuance at all, which once you understand the context, then you got to step back and say, like when Saddam invaded Kuwait, after he'd gone and talked to Ambassador April Glaspie and said, hey, these guys are stealing oil from me, and you got a problem if I go in and take care of it? And she said, U.S. government has no position on that. So he said, okay. It wasn't just because he had a 10-year relationship with us. Or I guarantee you, I don't have the files, but I'll bet you a lot of money that there were times where he went and checked things out with the United. I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And the U.S. would go, yeah, do it. Or no, don't do that. So that's why he was doing this with April. And then yet how we demonize him, how we make him the villain, how we make him one of the excuses for starting another needless war in the Middle East. And at the same time, having used him as a proxy to kill Iranians, 200,000 of them almost, and then sit back and say, why do those Iranians chant death to America? So, yeah, what I'm trying to do, and I know what Pepe does it, set the record straight. Make sure that people understand the full context of what's going on. And that's what, we're appreciative, Z, of, the information that you've been able to come up with. It's important to get this out to people that they understand that the world is changing. We're in the midst of a fundamental geopolitical change. That the world is essentially being turned upside down, and the United States is going to be on the outside of it, not inside.
No question about it. And that's the reason I did it. And I am very grateful to you guys. I want to thank you for having the confidence in me to accept my invitation and to do this. I truly, truly admire you for taking the leap of faith that this guy may be telling the truth and deciding to do this. I do want to point something else to you also, Larry. I mean, being a military man, I go way back. I was part of the effort made by Kissinger, Bill Simon, to convert the sale of the oil into petrodollars and to have those petrodollars come back to the United States in the form of treasury bonds in exchange for security, making sure that these guys will rule, these families will rule, and we will protect them. I mean, Bill Simon did that. I don't know if people know that or not.
He was the secretary. He was the Secretary of Treasury.
Yeah, Bill Simon
under Nixon.
and Kissinger made that happen, and I was part of that effort, that team that made that happen. I actually went one step further after it happened. I sold them a whole bunch of goddamn junk, that they did not need. Billions and billions of dollars of worth that has since been discarded, But at that time, they parted with billions of dollars. Now that has come to a halt. Okay, that has come to a halt. Now that kept this country afloat, and that kept the price of the dollar as a reserve currency. That's why the United States have kept on printing money, up to $40 trillion. But it's going to change. it is changing.
Well, and let me just comment that because I think we need to get close out here. I know I've got a 6:30 I've got to hit.
Yeah,
but almost 45 minutes. And Pepe needs to get some sleep. Not that he needs beauty sleep. Yeah. But this marks sort of the inaugural voyage of Power Shift. It's Zulfikar Ali's vision. And Pepe and I are fortunate that we've been brought into that vision to be partners. Pepe and I will each be doing one half hour to maybe hour presentation a week to discuss current issues. And then Pepe and I will be joined with Zulfikar every 2 weeks to do one of the sessions like we did today, where we're going to present intelligence information that you're not getting in a lot of the other channels. And to bring along our analysis based upon our experience. And I think we have a real powerful team in that regard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, please do mention where I'm getting this news. I don't know exactly how to say it. Right?
Well, I think it's better just to say, the information that you have been provided is from a knowledgeable source who has direct access to the activities.
He's he's in the table. He's in the table. Yeah. Yeah. And he sits at the table. He sits at the table, and one additional finity that I would add: this gentleman has access to direct information from the region. Direct, verified information from the region. So he's very, 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 very knowledgeable, and his only goal is to set the record straight. He doesn't expect me to pay him even a penny. Okay. So thank you very much, gentlemen. I really, truly appreciate it. I'm very grateful to you. And next Monday, Larry, right, will be your first day.
Yes.
And next Tuesday will be your first day. And then you and Larry.
I think today, all day tomorrow. But he's already said some things I need your take on, Doug, because I've never seen so much BS put into one soundbite. And let me play it for you here. This is how we started off the hearing this morning.
I just want to remind everybody, our foreign policy is one that's solely focused on the national interest of the United States of America, on the defense of our country, both its military defense and our security, but also our economic security and the vibrancy of our economy, our sovereignty, and our future. We believe that America should lead the world, and I believe that we are, and we'll have a very good story to tell about that. American leadership, however, should always be on behalf of the American interests. I say this because I think over a period of time in our foreign policy, we lost focus on that. The reality of it is that our foreign policy, first and foremost, must always be what is in the national interest of the United States of America. And determining the national interest oftentimes requires us to make pragmatic decisions. Sometimes in foreign policy, the choices are not between a good choice and a bad choice. It's between two less than ideal choices. And you're trying to figure out which one of these two choices is the one that is best for the United States and least harmful to our interests. And that plays out every single day.
Doug, I wonder who he thinks his audience is. Who is buying what he's putting down?
It's interesting. Whenever somebody starts out by saying things that are fundamentally untrue, you know that he's responding to discontent in the audience. I mean, he's got a lot of problems here in the United States. I think the latest poll that I saw was 65% of Americans polled were opposed to this war with Iran. And I don't know what other kind of polling data is out there. We know who the people are that poll. We may not get an accurate sort of outcome in terms of understanding what people really think. But I think we can take the risk of saying that if we were truly interested in the United States, we would not have attacked Iran. It just was not in our interest to do so. Anyone who even made a cursory glance in the direction of all the potential outcomes would have concluded that attacking Iran was a bad idea. Secondly, people are now reaching the conclusion that we are not in charge of our own foreign policy, that in fact all the really critical shots are being called in Israel by Mr. Netanyahu. And Congress, for all its supposed opposition to President Trump, certainly seems to be extraordinarily pacific when it comes to Israel. They are no less supportive of or quiet about what they're doing for Israel. So this is the Israel First administration. And because it is the Israel First administration, he's trying to tell everybody it's not the Israel First administration, right?
Again, I don't know who believes this, Doug. And do you think he believes it, Doug?
I think he'll believe whatever he has to, as long as he gets to pursue what he thinks is his agenda with Cuba and Latin America. That's my perception of him. Mm-hmm. This is the man who is supposed to be simultaneously both national security advisor and Secretary of State. And one asks, well, those are two very different jobs and very powerful jobs. The reason Kissinger was able to do both was that he had gained the trust and confidence of President Nixon. And it was a rather unique set of circumstances. I think in retrospect, it was a bad idea. Nixon shouldn't have done it. But that's neither here nor there. Right now, we need two separate people, two different people. If for no other reason, it would benefit the president to hear more than one perspective. Of course, that presupposes that President Trump is listening to anything anybody says anyway. I'm not sure I see much evidence for that at this stage. So it may not make any difference in that sense. But there is one good thing that we need to say about Secretary Rubio. Of all of the people that work currently for President Trump, he is arguably the most articulate and the most convincing.
Yeah,
doesn't mean I believe it, and I'm not saying this man is Shakespearean quality performer.
No,
simply saying, given what's out there, he's a hell of a lot more articulate than most. So that's the only good news. Otherwise, I think from the international community, it's a big ho-hum. I don't know, but I don't think a lot of people are paying attention.
Doug, he talks about, and you hear this pretty often, about leading the world, that the U.S., America, should be leading the world. And you wonder, how? With guns? With what? What are they leading the world with? They can't talk to people. They call the people that they're talking with crazy. How does he interpret that?
Well, let's be frank. A lot of these are empty phrases. These are things that have left over from the last 40, 50 years. The president of the United States is the leader of the free world. Okay, what's free world mean right now? It's hard to tell. I don't sign on for the notion that people that live in Russia or China are necessarily enslaved. I think they're free. Their notions of freedom obviously are different from ours. So that's another empty phrase. I think the business of we're leading the world is the kind of thing that the average American likes to hear without necessarily understanding whether or not it's meaningful. They like to hear, we won the Second World War. Well, we were on the winning side. We did not win it alone. But we say these things because they resonate with a certain number of people. Although right now, Gary, I think they're underestimating the intelligence and common sense of the American citizenry. I don't think the American people are interested in hearing that nonsense.
No.
They're interested in, well, wait a minute. Inflation is rising. It's up to almost 4%, and it's continuing to rise with each passing week. We expect it'll be up to 5 or 6% by the summer or the fall. Well, I thought the Fed was in control. The Fed is not in control. Interest rates rise because the market drives them up. So people are saying, what are you doing about that? Well, there's only so much that can be done because we're dealing with decades of mismanagement, poor leadership, no sensitivity to the needs of the American people. So what did? We printed money. It's reached a point where, you keep this up, we are going to go under. Oh, no, we can print for another decade. Good luck with that idea, because that's Mr. Besant. That's his view. We can't print for another decade. That's not going to work. There are a whole range of things like this. And I think Americans are tired of the BS. They want to know, why is everything costing more? What are you going to do to suppress this? And, these people in Washington are not interested in fundamental changes of direction. They just want Band-Aids. Oh, what can we do to bring down the price of oil? Well, let's drain the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Remember when we saw that during COVID with Biden, and everybody screamed bloody murder? Well, what do you think is happening now? The same thing. I think Rubio is giving the boilerplate speech. He just gives it better than everybody else.
Yeah, a little bit more slick, only a little though. So he goes on, Doug, and he crystallizes what this whole problem is with Iran. It's a little bit long here because the situation is that convoluted. So let's just watch it in its entirety, and we can just pick it apart afterwards.
If Iran wants to be able to move its oil again through the strait, they will have to reopen the straits. If they refuse to do so, then we have other options available to us, but we would prefer to negotiate the opening of this.
What do you need from them in order to get the strait reopened? We need the strait reopened tomorrow.
Well, what needs to happen is very simple. We're not charging a toll. We will help remove the mines that they put in there, and they will not fire on ships.
But the president says they also need to make commitments on their nuclear program. That's what I'm asking.
That's the predicate that opens the door to phase two. Phase two is they have to commit to very specific negotiations on disposition of the highly enriched uranium that still is buried deep in a mountain somewhere. They have to agree on negotiating severe and long-term limitations and or cancellation of enrichment activity in their country.
In the second phase of negotiations.
Obviously, these are highly technical matters, so I don't think you could work those out in 5 days. That would require a team of experts to meet over a 30, 60, 90-day period and work out the details. But they have to commit to their willingness to do that. For example, they have to commit to say, we will dispose of the enriched uranium. And the question now is, what are the mechanisms by which we do so?
In order to get to that second phase, are you willing to release sanctions or release frozen money that the United States is withholding from Iran?
Right now, everything that's been discussed with them is that any sanctions relief. Now, remember, sanctions come, there's international sanctions, there's congressional sanctions, there's executive sanctions. So some we can release and some we cannot. But any sanctions relief is condition-based, which means it has to be in return for the reason why those sanctions were put in place in the first place, which is their nuclear program. So yeah, look, Iran is being sanctioned because they enrich uranium. Iran is being sanctioned because they've highly enriched uranium. Iran is being sanctioned because of their nuclear activities. If they agree to give up those things, there will be sanctions relief associated with their commitment and compliance
you will not give
with those
sanctions
agreements.
Relief just in exchange for reopening the strait.
No, that's not been discussed. That's not been offered.
Doug, haven't we been here already? How many times can Iran say, no, we're not going to do that? No, we're not going to do that. And yet they keep circling back like this. And he just capitalized everything that we're looking at the impossible.
Well, he's done an excellent job of once again restating Mr. Netanyahu's policy positions, because that's essentially what we've adopted. And that's what we're saying. None of this is original, and there is no negotiation. All we've ever done is restate over and over and over again what Mr. Netanyahu says he must have. And whenever there's a possibility that there could be some modification that would lead to any kind of breakthrough, Mr. Netanyahu gets on the phone and makes it clear to Donald Trump that that's unacceptable. And Donald Trump says, yes, sir, Roger, got it, and goes back to work again to realize Israel's goals. Now, let's be frank about a few things here. Everyone acts as though everything that's happening is the fault of Iran. Well, Iran did not begin this war. And you'll get a response, but they started this war 47 years ago. Well, that's not really true.
we decided that whatever they proposed, whatever they stood for, whatever they wanted was somehow or another bad. And so we bankrolled Mr. Saddam Hussein, president of Iraq, with huge amounts of money. We bankrolled him to go to war with Iran in the hopes that Iran was prostrate, it was weak, most of its senior military leadership was gone, its equipment was old, and that the Iraqis, with our brilliant advice, remember, keep that in mind, our brilliant military advice, once again, would enable the Iraqis to rapidly overrun Iran's oil fields. And the big bonus at that point was that the people living in Iran in those areas were mostly Arabs. And so we said Arab nationalism will triumph and Arab nationalism will bring down Iran. Does that sound familiar? Ultimately, it didn't work. In fact, the Arabs in Khuzestan, who mostly are Shiites, not all, but mostly, all decided that their citizenship and their presence inside Iran was much more important to them than signing away their lives to Saddam Hussein. The whole thing failed. We think somewhere between 500 and 800,000 casualties on the Iranian side. How many died? Certainly somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 Iranians died. They fought tenaciously, and ultimately the war ended with Iran in control of its own oil resources, which was what was most important. And they hurled rockets and missiles at each other. None of us really paid a great deal of attention to it. We only looked at what Saddam did. But again, the Iranians learned a lot from that. So here we sit right now. We keep arguing that somehow or another Iran makes us uncomfortable, presents this tremendous threat, and that if we don't destroy Iran and bring it under control, that millions of terrorists will overrun the world and so forth. It's all nonsense. Who wants this? This is an Israeli proposition. This is an Israeli agenda. And the Israeli agenda is underwritten by billionaires in the United States who bought President Trump the White House. Least they can do after they bought Congress for their own purposes, might as well buy the White House as well. They own everything. So they own everything right now. And what do you get? You give Marco Rubio, you get Pete Hegseth, you get Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and everybody else that is loyal to the bitter end to the Israeli agenda. Anybody thinks otherwise is wrong. If you were not an Israel first person, you weren't going to get a job in the administration. Yeah. It's unapologetic. So we're stuck because we took on a war without really understanding what we were doing. You know, one of the first things you need to do is say, well, wait a minute. We're going to go into Iran, right? And somebody says, well, we want to bomb it. Okay. What do you want to bomb? Well, we're going to bomb their nuclear facilities. We're going to bomb this. And then pretty soon the target list goes from 10 critical things out to 1,000. And, oh, well, those targets are destroyed. What do we do now? Well, we'll find more targets. That's kind of where we are. And then somebody brings up, well, what about ground forces? Ooh, ground forces. That could mean a lot of casualties, and Americans don't like that. And, oh, by the way, we don't have enough of an army to do anything. And this thing sort of, snowballs and continues. Now we found it impossible to break through the strait. We find it impossible to seize control of the strait. We're afraid that if we do, we'll lose ships. So now we have a quote unquote blockade. Well, here's a flash of the obvious that maybe everybody needs to understand, including Mr. Rubio. Tankers carrying oil to China, India, Japan, they are passing through the strait. Oil is reaching those countries. Iran is exporting oil, not just through the strait, but also overland. So the notion that somehow or another Iran is being reduced to a state of total poverty, panic, and anarchy is wrong. It's not true. So what good is the blockade? What is it doing? Is it making any difference? Well, what it means is that as long as we're playing this particular game, no ship that is destined for the United States or Israel or has an Israeli or American flag on it is going to get through the strait. That's clear. But everybody else, and by the way, when I mentioned China, Russia, India, for instance, and Japan, the Japanese, certainly on the first 3 tankers that went through, they paid no tolls. China, Russia, and Japan are paying no tolls. The only people that are being expected to pay tolls are nations that have aligned themselves in one way or another with us or with Iran's enemies. they're paying tolls. But even they are moving fuel, oil, various other substances through the Gulf to their destinations. So this, I don't know what the hell this blockade is really doing. I'm figured it out.
They keep saying that it's crippling them economically. You hear that regularly. They're convinced of it.
I don't see any evidence for it. You know, everybody used to forget you have this giant land border. You also have the Caspian Sea. All this stuff can move in and out of the country without any interference from us. The bottom line is that we are delusional. We're living in a bubble, and the bubble says we are winning. But you leave the bubble, and everybody else knows, no, you're not.
You know what's so troubling, Doug, is that you know that Trump is surrounded by enough people, a chosen few, that are willing to keep making the argument. So even when we just heard the state of affairs with what's going on diplomatically, or if they're talking at all, but we just heard Rubio explain what's going on there, then we've got people on the other side that's saying, listen, those talks aren't going to work anyway, so let's resort to the military action. Here's former CIA Dan Hoffman.
It's very difficult for us to carry on negotiations when we don't have that. When Iran is in control of the Strait of Hormuz, they have a lot of leverage. The regime right now is in the hands of General Vahidi and the IRGC hardliners, and they are pressing ahead with their strategic goals. Let's remember that Iran is kind of a junior partner, but part of the axis of dictatorships aligned closely with Russia and China and North Korea. Certainly for Russia and for China, Iran wants to reduce or eliminate altogether U.S. influence in the Middle East. That's part of what's behind this. I don't see a way of climbing down through negotiation absent additional military strikes. I'm sorry to say that I think we're going to have to resume military strikes. If we want to get to a point where we have the leverage to get the deal that we want, the deal that's better than JCPOA, on which the president will be judged and arguably his foreign policy legacy, I think that may be in the offing.
So, Doug, the argument that more strikes is what will give us the leverage that we finally need, that's the mentality.
Well, let's sort of examine this Zionist Jewish narrative, which he's just presented, which is a narrative that you hear across all the mainstream media in the United States and much of Western Europe. That's for obvious reasons. The people in control fall into that particular category. It's not accurate, it's misleading, but he's pointing out something that is painfully obvious, and that is we can't win a military victory over Iran right now. That's an impossibility. So what do you do if you can't win the military victory? Well, normally you negotiate and get the best deal that you can. You can't do that. That's outrageous. Your whole life, Mr. President, your whole world will be judged on the basis of what you do in the Persian Gulf. Well, I freely admit that what we do in the Persian Gulf has already had an impact. It's revealed that we are not invincible. It's demonstrated that our forces, which are very good and can do many things, are not designed to do what we've asked them to do. That's true. It also ignores the enormous impact that this is having on the world as well as us, and how negative that is, and can only get worse unless we change the current conditions. Can't change those militarily, so what do? Well, you ratchet. You have to attack more targets. You have to kill more people. And eventually you discover there's only one way forward, and that's a nuclear weapon. And people will say, well, you, Mr. President, are not a man of your word. You have no guts unless you use a nuclear weapon against these evil people. Of course, you know, this business of who's evil and who isn't is very much open to debate right now. But I think that's the next step. And I think it's important for us to keep in mind that that's coming. And what we need to understand is that if that is even approached seriously in any way, shape, or form, the consequences around the world will be extremely profound. We already know that Pakistan possesses a nuclear weapon. Of course they do. They've had that for many, many years. And contrary to the expectations of many people, the very radicalized Islamist Pakistanis have never used it against anybody. They saw it as a necessary deterrent to prevent a war of extermination waged against them by India. Well, it's worked out so that India also has a deterrent, and that has helped, frankly, to keep the peace on the Indian subcontinent. Neither side has been willing to do that. But now we have a different set of circumstances. Israel, not us, but Israel is embarked on a war of conquest in the Middle East. Its army is falling apart. It's got serious morale problems. They've lost a lot of people. The population doesn't want to fight, but that doesn't matter because they still have the Air Force. And most of the people that they're attacking have no air defenses. And as long as the people they're attacking have no air defenses to speak of, they can pretty much bomb at will wherever they like against anybody they don't like. Secondly, this war of conquest is very serious. All you have to do is look on the uniforms of the Israeli soldiers. And it shows Sinai under Israeli control, Jordan, parts of northern Saudi Arabia, half or more of Syria, part of northern Iraq, and most of Lebanon. So that's the goal. And right now, there is a growing consensus that this must stop. And that consensus is in the Islamic world. The Arab states are too corrupt, too greedy, and too fearful, that is, their elites, to do anything. So the task then falls to the non-Arab states. The non-Arab states that are very opposed to this are Turkey, Ankara, Pakistan, and obviously Iran and Tehran, Islamabad. These are the capitals, these are the states that are opposed. And there are discussions. People are saying it's time to turn over nuclear weapons, one way or the other in some form, even if it's temporary, to Iran and Turkey in particular. Give them this as the deterrent they need to bring this war to a halt. Now, this is very dangerous, as we all know, because Mr. Netanyahu has nuclear weapons. Everybody's aware of that, at least somewhere in the neighborhood of 300. If he thinks that this could happen, what is to stop him from launching a nuclear weapon? Quick answer, nothing.
Nothing.
What evidence is there that he listens to anything Washington says to him? That he takes instruction from the president of the United States? Nothing.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's important that we keep these things in mind. And if we were serious about bringing this to an end, this terrible and pointless and stupid and self-defeating war with Iran, we would pull the plug on the Israelis right away and say, very well, you don't care to participate in a negotiated settlement that we are reaching with Iran? So be it. You're on your own now. We are going to come to an understanding with the Iranians. I also think the Israelis, there are still sober-minded, balanced thinkers in Israel, would say, wait a minute. You mean the United States refuses to support our war of mass murder and expulsion in Gaza or Lebanon or anywhere else we care to wage it?
Right.
We might want to consider stopping. Because how long can we last in this region without unconditional support from the United States? But we are not ready to go there. But in truth, that's what needs to happen.
But it's not, Doug, because the neocons still have at least one more silver bullet. And here's Hoffman explaining that silver bullet.
There's lots of options for strikes. There are strikes against Iran's military facilities, their ballistic missile, drone facilities, the nuclear program, but there are also decapitation strikes. And I'm quite sure that in the wide range of options that the U.S. military is considering, and Israel as well, are additional decapitation strikes. In other words, if the current Iranian leadership doesn't want to negotiate, maybe the next round will.
So we can talk to the newer leadership, Doug. We've just got to get to that next level. Those are the people we're looking for. Then we can work this out. Do you believe they're hanging their hat on that?
Well, we know from experience how well this works. We know that if you remove one CEO in a corporation, they replace him with another. And if that CEO is unsatisfactory, doesn't work, you replace him with a new one. What they don't understand is that it doesn't make any difference just because you kill a certain number of people that are in positions of authority, that the whole world is going to fall apart. We're back to the false assumption that Iran is what I call another Sykes-Picot state. The Sykes-Picot states are places like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, so forth, Syria, and then ultimately Israel. that if you just get the people in charge at the top, everybody else will be scared into submission. That's not going to happen in Iran. There is no willingness to see Iran as what it is. It is a core civilizational state. It is a great nation. It has existed for over 2,500 years. Some people would argue more. It has its own culture, its own history, its own way of life. It has high human capital. They have people with the brains, the ability to operate on a very high plane when it comes to rocketry, nuclear weapons, computers of any kind, cyberspace, artificial intelligence, all of those things. Stop pretending that Iran is something less. It's not. It is a major power, and it is coming back to life in ways that I don't think any of us expected when this war started. They are becoming an ever greater power with each passing day. They understand the leverage they have, and they are not going to retire into the corner and skulk in fear. It's not going to happen. We went through this with Russia. Russia is weak. Russia will fall apart. Russia is corrupt. Russia's this, Russia that. Russia today is stronger than it has ever been, and certainly in my lifetime in the last 30, 40 years. So, no, this is insane. It's crazy. It has no chance of success. We've been doing this decapitation thing forever.
And Doug, you would say, I'm assuming that you'd say that Iran is in a stronger, better place than they were before this war.
Strategically, without question. And whatever damage they've sustained, they know they can recover. And we don't seem to understand that. They will bounce back. They'll probably bounce back stronger and better than they ever have in their past. Their society is much more cohesive now. I would argue it's probably more cohesive than the Israeli society at this stage.
Doug, you had sent me a analysis on gas from Paul Sankey. Let me play the clip from what he was putting out.
U.S. gasoline inventories, they are absolutely plummeting. And so what we've seen here is the largest 13-week move in the history of the series. It is interesting to note that in the prior 13 weeks, you had a record build over that period. So again, we went into this with high inventories. But certainly what you're seeing in U.S. gasoline is an extremely rapid drawdown. And most of us are pointing towards June to July. That is, as June continues and we begin to hit July, as getting critical for when we hit the bottom of the tanks.
I think Paul Sankey is right. He's not the only man saying this, but he's a good person to listen to. He's got a lot of experience in this industry. And he's simply saying where we're headed right now, we're going to hit rock bottom probably mid to late July, certainly early August at the latest. And that's because we're selling off portions of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And this is designed to suppress prices, particularly for gasoline, but also for jet fuel. And some of these sales are being done inside the United States for use inside the United States. And some of these sales are being done or being executed to help friends overseas. Remember, these are all the people like the Japanese, the Koreans, and others that were never consulted on the dumb idea of going to war with Iran. But we're going to run out of any sort of flexibility, and we're going to halt all exports, I suspect, quite soon of crude oil. Some exceptions, things like the shale oil that needs special refining, which we cannot provide. But otherwise, I think you're going to see an embargo self-imposed in terms of not exporting anything else. And the question is what happens to our economy, and steel and oil have turned out to be, over the last several hundred years, the big indicators of national strength and prosperity and power. Those indicators are not encouraging right now, not by any means.
And then we can add to that the whole situation with fertilizer.
Oh, God. It's so interesting. How do you get it across to people that, fertilizer is life? This green energy, green revolution that we went through back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, really has changed the world. It's doubled the population of the planet. We've been able to feed people on a scale we never thought possible. Right. But without the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the other ingredients, we're in a lot of trouble. And, what you don't plant today, you don't eat in 6 months. And it takes time for these supply chains to mobilize. Those supply chains are in trouble. Why? Well, trucks run on diesel. What are they going to do? They've got to deliver this. It's frightening. And that's why to listen to somebody like Rubio, who is pitching these sort of I don't know, empty slogans and empty promises is so disturbing, because nobody wants to frighten people, but people ought to be frightened right now, because what we've done by attacking Iran, we've not just hurt ourselves. We put a large portion of the world's population at very high risk.
Disrupted the whole world. We're doing fine right now as far as supplies go, but that's not going to hold.
Well, nobody pays attention to the numbers of farmers who are declaring
bankruptcies.
They can't afford to buy fertilizer. The price is going through the roof. What good is fertilizer you can't afford to buy? And how much can you subsidize? Now, right now in India, they're subsidizing everything in sight to try and keep the lid on. But even they are worried, the government is, over the next several months, how long can this go on before everything collapses? There are other things that you need to do. We need more nuclear power. Let's be frank. That's vital and essential. Are there green aspects of power that you can reinvigorate? Yeah, sure there are. But you're going to need to do a lot more with coal. Remember, coal, that's the evil thing that everybody wants to get rid of. It's dirty and nasty and bad. Well, the Indians, and I think the Japanese, are moving in that direction. I know they are in China. They're liquefying coal. You can do that. And it works. We're going to have to do all of these things, but there has to be a sense of not just urgency, but emergency in Washington. I don't see it. No. I don't see any evidence for it, not with the president or anybody else, because the first thing anybody who's advising the president should do every morning is say, sir, end the war. Get out. Stop. We'll sort the details later. Right now, we need to get out.
He's already kicked those people out, Doug. He's not going to get face to face with any of those people that would even hint at what you just suggested.
Yeah, I think so.
Just yesterday, Doug, I know you released the national conversation called All for What, and you get into some great details about what needs to happen, what should be happening already. And I'd like to set it up before you get into what you were talking about in this video with Megyn Kelly, who was just on a podcast yesterday. And you know how close she was with the president for a year. She campaigned for him, spoke at rallies for him. I mean, she was a real, MAGA loyalist. Let's see how Megyn Kelly is depicting the MAGA movement at this present time.
All along, he's defined what is and is not MAGA. And he told me personally, MAGA will feel the way I want them to feel. I'll tell them how to feel about this, that, or the other thing, and they will. And he has been totally right on that. The problem for Trump now is that he has defined MAGA literally to those who agree with Mark Levin. If you don't agree with Mark Levin, you're not MAGA, which means you must be a neocon whose main issue is what's in the best interest of Israel. And that defines MAGA down to nothing. It's a nub. So what's that? It's not large. It's not important. It's not cool. It's not appealing to young people. It has no future. Much like Mark Levin himself, it's old, it's angry, and it's dying. So those are the people who, like, the die-hard loyalists who will just feel the way Trump wants them to feel, are the ones who are harassing you for saying what you think about Thomas Massie. They're entitled to their opinion, but they do not represent the Republican Party. They don't represent the right, and they definitely don't represent the future.
People are waking up, and some of his strongest advocates, his loyalists, have turned, and just what you heard Megyn in her own words describe. And is that not similar to what you were saying? And what is this for? What's going on in America right now?
I tried to answer and urged everybody to ask very simply, is who is governing us? That may seem like a stupid question to some, but we need to ask that question. Who is governing us? Who is ruling this country? Who is determining the answers to the big questions? It's certainly not the American people. Nothing happening right now is something the American people would have voted for. And they're beginning to discover that it doesn't make any damn difference whom you vote for, because both parties are captives of the same lobbies. Now, we talk primarily about the Israel lobby and the billionaires that support it. That's part of it. But there are other lobbies, whether they're in the agricultural sector, the high-tech sector, and other things. You've got lots of lobbies that are weighing in on big policy questions. The American people aren't represented. The American people need to come to the conclusion that if they're going to be represented effectively, if someone is going to stand up for them, articulate their interests, and then act accordingly, they're going to have to move in a new direction. And that's really what the national conversation wants to do. We want to build the foundation for a third-party movement. We want to explore how large it can be, how many people we can bring in, and how we recruit people and make it work. This is not something that can happen quickly, but I think it's going to happen faster in the future than ever before, because the pain inflicted on the American people is going to grow in the months ahead. And people in the government that wave it off and say, oh, no, it's not a problem. We can print more money. We can print for another 10 years before anything happens. Well, look at the bond market in Great Britain right now. Look at what's happening in London. That government hangs by a thread. We're on the same path. These things are not controllable. And the idea of simply printing more money as a way to solve all the problems is a dead end. So I think that's really what I tried to do in this, and get people to understand that we have been essentially taken over by a minority of very wealthy people who are calling the shots. They don't care whatever about us under any circumstances. So this has got to stop. But the only way to stop it is not to go to Washington and ask the people that created the problem to help us. They're not going to do anything for us. It's not in their interest. Look at all the insider training. People say, well, we got to give the Democrats a chance. They had a chance. They've had a chance many times. It hasn't improved anything. What is the difference between Tony Blinken and Marco Rubio? Nothing. Nothing. Wake up. These people are all bought and paid for. And we're going to have to move away from them. That's because people say, can we do this? Well, somebody said, Doug, that's going to take a lot of money. I said, yes, it will. And it's going to take people with major wealth backing it, but it can be done.
It's got to be done, right?
Yeah, I think so, or we're not going to be around long. What we need to do is we need to build a new republic. The old one is on its last legs. There's nothing wrong with that. All great powers, great nations go through this. We just need to build a new republic.
Yeah, amen. I want to point everybody to McGregorWarrior.substack.com. That's where you can get all Doug's work, all his writings. It's all laid out for you here.
Yeah, we'll have some new things on there very short.
Yeah. Larry, yesterday there was a storm between Israel and Lebanon. Israel announced that they're going to attack Lebanon in Dahieh, in southern part of Beirut. And the city is gigantic. Dahieh is a very populated area. And they wanted everybody to evacuate their homes, all of their homes and everything there, and get out of the city.
And quite a few people are there who've already evacuated further south to Beirut.
Yeah, exactly. And here is, before getting to what has happened yesterday, which I would focus later on, between Iran and Donald Trump and between Israel and Donald Trump, here is the main problem that Israel is facing, which was mentioned by Israeli UN ambassador Danny Danon. Here is what he said.
Of a drone used by Hezbollah. This is what we are dealing with. Now, Hezbollah are using different kinds of drones. Few of them with fiber optic. These drones weigh less than 2 kilograms. It flies low. It is very difficult to detect. And by the time you hear it above your head, it's too late. It can fly undetected for tens of miles. and all of a sudden you see it above your head. A thin cable is what makes this drone different. It does not rely on a radio signal. It cannot be easily jammed, unfortunately. It gives the operator a live video feed and direct control until impact. This is a modern warfare, cheap, precise, deadly.
Which you have seen operational in Ukraine for what? 28 months, 30 months, whatever, maybe longer. So why are you just now, big question, why are you just now, you vaunted Israeli military and intelligence complex, why are you just now coming up with this?
And first of all, he said Hezbollah. The pronunciation is Hezbollah, which means the Hez means the party, and the second word is Allah, means the Hezb, the party of God.
Yeah.
And this is he says Hezbollah. Many of our audience the other day asked, "This is Hezbollah or Hezbollah?" It's Hezbollah. And
Probably because they're trying to make it a pejorative. They're trying to corrupt it, I would guess.
yeah.
They miss nothing in terms of propaganda. Nothing. They miss drones and the damage they do to tanks, but they don't miss a point on propaganda, especially Netanyahu.
And this is the reality, Larry, they're facing right now against Hezbollah. They cannot, they have no solution for these FPV drones. And
The solution is to go as fast as they can to the north and kill everything in sight.
exactly. That's what they wanted to do yesterday.
Yep.
They wanted just to destroy everything in Dahiya, in Beirut, the way they did, by the way, in the West Bank, in Gaza. We've seen that. How is that going to play out for Israelis? And then we had the Iranian government coming out and no direct talks, indirect talks, no messages, nothing. We're not going to have any sort of negotiation with the United States. And Israelis have to evacuate the northern part of Israel. We're going to attack the northern part of it as soon as they attack Dahiya. That's why Donald Trump called Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm sure that you know what Axios reported on that. Nobody would believe what Axios says, but at least we know that there was some sort of call between the two, the Prime Minister of Israel and Donald Trump. What is your understanding of what this happened yesterday?
Well, my understanding is that Trump told him to knock it off. And my understanding is that Netanyahu said temporarily yes, and then went right back to what he was doing and has no intention of knocking it off. And that Iran has picked up on that, and we can await the strikes, because I don't think Iran is kidding around when they say
We're having some technical difficulties.
Not only the more people they're going to kill or get killed, but the deeper is going to be the profundity of their loss. And all I had to do was take out, as I was telling you before we went on the air, I have about a 20 by 30 space where I can put down a fairly large map. But even then, I can't encompass the distances we're talking about with precision. But some of these maps are pretty good. So I took a look at the Chinese railroad that comes in through the mountains in Mashhad and directly into Tehran and then goes elsewhere. And by the way, it finally apparently is destined for London. And then I looked at the Caspian Sea and the routes and the ports on the Caspian Sea, both in the south and the north. And if you're talking about logistics wins most wars, and certainly wars that are this far away for the United States, which is why we did Desert Storm in Desert Storm or Desert Shield in Desert Storm, Desert Shield. Desert Shield was putting 600,000 troops and all the supplies and such that was necessary. Powell's characteristic remark about it was when he was asked, why did you send 5 carrier battle groups? And he said, because I didn't have 6. In other words, we put the kitchen sink on the ground in Kuwait and elsewhere. That's the only way you deal with this kind of disparity in depth, strategic depth, logistics, and so forth. Now, Iraq wasn't quite the same situation because it's on the other side of the Persian Gulf. And so you had at your back Saudi Arabia, you had the Gulf Cooperation Council in general and so forth. You had Kuwait as your forward movement center. We have none of that now with respect to Iran. We have great depth on the other side, strategic and otherwise, even tactical depth. And with the railroad and the Caspian, you have inexhaustible supplies coming in from Russia and China. We need to stop. We need to stop before this defeat is incredibly deep and profound, and before it starts something globally that looks a lot like a recession followed by a depression. And that's got this administration, I think, in tatters. It can't seem to figure out where it is or what it needs to do. Mainly because what it needs to do is back down.
Larry, we have 2 scenarios, one on the part of the United States, the other one on the part of Israelis. Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want the United States to get out of the region.
No.
They want the United States to stay there, I would say forever, because this is going to facilitate what he has in his mind, which we know is just to destroy and capture more land from Lebanon, from Syria, from Gaza, from the West Bank, maybe all the West Bank, while the United States is somehow getting involved in some sort of conflict or some sort of war with Iran. And they're going to do their job on the other hand, on the other side of the region. And how do you see the way that Donald Trump and his administration see what's going on?
Well, that's an interesting phrase you used after my map reconnaissance, the other side of the region. What is the other side of the region? Where does it stop? Does it stop at Iran's border? Does it stop with Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, all of whom are involved in this, and all of whom are providing conduits for Russia and China? We are up against not just Iran, but we're up against Central Asia, recognizing where its bread is buttered. And its bread is buttered not in the West. it's buttered in China and buttered in Russia. Russia, from the point of view of it's sitting atop them and able to do things that they would not like, and China in terms of it's developing them majorly. This railroad stops in almost all of the points of the previous empires in history that were dynamic, productive, and are so again, big time. So that's what we're up against. More and more I read this, if there's anyone in the Pentagon with a strategic mindset, any colonel, lieutenant colonel, whatever, really thinking about this and doing what I just did, sort of cursorily, but nonetheless, I think indicatively, understands we're fighting China. We're not fighting Iran. We're only fighting Iran as a proxy of China. We're fighting China. And this is not a fight we're going to win. And it doesn't portend well for the real fight with China if that's what we're planning on sometime in the not too distant future, because we're losing the preliminary skirmishes. And oh, by the way, we're losing the preliminary skirmish in Ukraine too. And it looks like very much that Putin has decided not only is he going to send Oreshniks into Kyiv and into, where was the other place on the Dnieper River? He sent some into, Dnieper. It's looking like we're going much wider there, much more profoundly there. Putin is talking about eliminating the title of special military operation and calling it a war and declaring war on Ukraine. That would be the first step, I think, to a much wider war with strikes on NATO targets in NATO countries other than those that abut Ukraine, for example, like Poland. So this is
the bigger Israel loses in the Middle East. He sees how Israel is losing everything. That's why he's asking. There is no other solution for what Donald Trump is trying to do in the Middle East. The only solution would be putting troops on the ground, which is impossible, which looking at the reality is impossible. So the only solution for Donald Trump is to get out of the Middle East, get out of the West Asia. What he's suggesting, but you feel that his main concern is about Israel.
You better believe it is. You know, I get these emails from, I don't think he'll mind my saying it. In fact, he'd probably like it. A guy by the name of Eddie Hasbrook. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's very much into the anti-draft movement and believes that draft is absolutely unconstitutional and, you know, shouldn't have a draft at all. Well, he just sent me an email based on surveys and polling data for young people in America who would be subject to this new way of doing computation for the selective service systems. It's all going to be automatic, you know. And I'm reading it, I'm reading through it, and I'm reading the percentage of young people he's interviewed and what they say. Okay, implement a draft, country fall apart. America would fall apart. There would be no 1939, 1940. And even there, with the legislature and the people, it was a close run thing because we weren't, you know, attacked yet. Pearl Harbor hadn't happened. Very close run thing to get the draft installed, and then even closer run thing to get it extended when Roosevelt wanted it extended and Pearl Harbor hadn't happened yet. I don't even think if you had something like because this is an all volunteer force, has been for years, for a generation. So if you were to put ground troops in Iran and they were swallowed up and every one of them killed or captured, paraded on television cameras in Tehran, you would not get a real movement in America to react. That's what these polls showed. There would be no young people who would be positive about coming in and getting themselves killed in Southwest Asia in some kind of follow-up action. So we're in trouble, Nima. I mean, deep, deep trouble. Trump's just the symptom of it in many respects. He's a nauseous, contemptible symptom. No question about it. It's like we got Nero at the end. By the way, one person was talking to me about that the other day, and I said, you do realize that the Roman Empire lasted well beyond Nero. It wasn't exactly the same, but it did last for quite a while. It's a different situation today. It's a different situation. I take this guy who wrote the article about dismemberment seriously, because I could see where we would fall apart, literally fall apart before our eyes. Texas would go one way, New York would go another way, California would go another way, not geographically, but certainly politically and ultimately in terms of the Union. It wouldn't be 1860, 1861 and somebody leaving because they had an issue with slavery or an issue with whatever caused the Civil War, states' rights, whatever. It would be because they're sick and tired of Washington and other things. Better fate as Texas than as a part of an empire that's disintegrating before your eyes. And we haven't even reached that point yet. The big piece in this article was about the economic disaster that's coming and what it's going to do, what it's going to do to the average American, what it's going to do to, well, virtually everyone, but particularly what it's going to do in combination with some of the other things that are going on, like AI and so forth. Really a disheartening article, but very well written and very well sourced in terms of history. You can see it happening. I mean, my friends tell me, oh, America will never fall apart, not like some of these other places did. It's not going to fall apart. Okay, what guarantees you that? Because as this author points out, some of the most important state or what you may call national characteristics adhere to America today. We have so many disparate groups amongst us with their own agendas, with their own feelings about the American dream, and either not being able to achieve it or having achieved it and having it taken away suddenly. We've been buying things on the world's pocketbook. Really, we've been living on the world's pocketbook because our dollar allowed us to. We've been living not on our productivity, not on our incredible manufacturing base, not on anything like what we were living on, say, at the end of 1890. We're living on other people's willingness to buy our debt. And that's not a good adhesive when it begins to unravel. It's a very splintering adhesive. It goes. And all of a sudden, people are looking around and realizing, my God, there's nothing here. Then you got problems. You got significant problems. Even if you're still surviving with a pretty decent superstructure, warehouses all around, AI going up everywhere, highways teeming with cars and so forth. All of this is on someone else's dime and has been for some time. People loaning us money.
I don't know if you heard Rubio today talking and about the summit in China. What he said is just, it doesn't show any positive, any outcome out of that summit in China. And he says, because he said that we are dependent on China, something like 90% of rare earth minerals coming from China. And how important is that for the chips, for the production of chips, for the military industrial complex, with these weapons being depleted by this war of choice of Donald Trump in the Middle East. And that's why you see Marco Rubio in Armenia signing a deal with the government in Armenia about rare earth minerals. I don't know how much of what they need can come from Armenia. This is just amazing what's going on with the Trump administration.
There's actually, as I've said many times before, there's actually a lot of this in the United States, but we won't go after it because it requires eminent domain be implemented in a massive sort of way. You have to go into places where people live with palatial homes and so forth and say, get out. China has had not a lot of problem with doing that. Look at the Yellow River Dam when they built that. What was it, 2.5 million people or something? Oh, move over here. We're going to build a dam. Can't do that in this country. You create all kinds of politics and people standing up to stop you and, you know, environmental interests and so forth. I'm not saying those things are bad, but it does give you a certain sclerosis when you have plenty of natural resources left in a particular category, but you can't mine them, you can't get to them because people live there. So, you know, do we, at a moment of desperation, change all of that and just rape, pillage, and plunder our own country in an attempt to save ourselves? It might happen. It might happen, but I think it's going to be too late. I think it's going to be too late. Australia, same way, with a little bit less problem. Canada, same way, with a little bit less problem too. But you do have to be extremely environmentally degrading and extremely uninterested in the environment if you're going to go after this stuff lock, stock, and barrel, you know, and get it, whether it's lithium or some other ingredient you need desperately. We do have a lot of it, but we just aren't mining it. I suspect Brazil is in, I would guess Brazil probably has tons of things that it just doesn't know about yet. You'll find out once you finish raping the rainforest.
Yeah.
And I understand gold is a real problem again, all across the face of the earth, because the price has gone up so high now that people are wildcatting gold mines and things everywhere. Doesn't matter where you are, if there's gold, they're doing it. And they're tearing up the environment majorly in a lot of places.
By the way, Rubio mentioned Brazil today. He said that Colombia, Brazil, there's some sort of problem for us.
Right winger going to win in Colombia?
I don't see that.
What do you think that would that mean? A different Colombia in terms of its relationships with the United States, or would it mean
No, no. No country in the Latin America gonna be something like gonna be such, what we have in Argentina. Argentina is just different. No one. You get the right wing, left wing here in Brazil. It's not gonna be anything like Argentina.
Yeah.
This is totally different.
Argentina's always been, La República de Argentina has always been very different because its immigration patterns back in the 18th, 19th century were kind of like ours. Germans, Scots, and others coming to Argentina. I remember reading texts that kind of lamented what had happened in Argentina with the caudillo tradition. That's what they attributed it to, Perón and people like that, and saying it could have been the United States of the South. No problem. Several times people made that prediction that it was going to be the United States of the South. It would be so successful that it would rival the United States in terms of economic and political power. And the Buenos Aires never could get out of the caudillo tradition, and so that ruined it. I don't know. But I do know Argentina seems to me, and I've not widely traveled in South America, but I've traveled in a lot of the countries. Argentina seems different.
Yeah.
Very different from Chile, for example. Very different.
Even the president of Argentina the guy is so much.
He's a nut.
Out of his mind.
He's a nut. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
He's kind of like Trump, only in a different mode of operation. But
He's cousin of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah. It's funny these people that are kind of iconoclastic fall in with the same gang for different reasons. But Buenos Aires has always had a problem with budgets too. Always had a problem with budgets. And that's given us inroads. It's given us inroads. I remember during the little war, the Falklands War, the Malvinas War, we were working both sides of the street. And as we usually do, we were trying to keep our relations with the junta warm. At the same time, we were not going to piss Maggie Thatcher off, but we were doing some things like we did with Iran and Iraq in the Iran-Iraq war. We better keep things warm here with Buenos Aires. Oh, we got to do things right with London. It was even Sandy Woodward, the admiral who was in charge basically for the British down there, when he came up to Newport to brief us on the war, he said, one more ship, and I would have called London and told them it's over.
Revolutionary salute to our brother Vincent Brown Scott for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Appreciate the love, soldiers. Salute.
Bring us home. It's over. We can't fight this war. We can't fight this war. The submarines were what we're getting him. And he said it didn't happen. So I got the victory, But he said it was a close run thing. Very honest guy. Very honest Navy guy, which British admirals tend to be if they have a brain. Now, there's a lot of them don't have a brain, but if they do have a brain, they're usually pretty straightforward about how things go. Were it to happen again, I don't think England could even get down there, let alone win the war. What would they'd sail the carrier down there and they would probably break halfway there. The carrier, the carrier. And what would the Argentines do? They would put a Wycoming torpedo into the carrier, probably. Look for that one to break out again sometime soon.
Yeah. Larry, don't you think that one of the ways out for Donald Trump, some sort of, in his eye, it's a disaster in my opinion, but in his eyes could be some sort of off-ramp that he calls these aircraft carriers to come close to Cuba instead of being in the West Asia because of the Cuba. Come here and then getting out of the Middle East and starting something with Cuba, which is a disaster in my opinion. And
I am really surprised, Nima, that he hasn't done that already. And I don't necessarily mean Donald Trump coming up with the idea, but Steve Miller or someone like that. We need a distraction. We can have a distraction a la Maduro in Venezuela. We can have the same kind of thing. It's easy to do. We'll snatch Raul Castro. bring him to the United States. It'll be a victory for Pete Hegseth and the Pentagon. Again, it'll look really good, and it'll take people's minds off Iran for a while. But even that's temporary. It's temporary. And I'm not sure now, with the leverage that Russia and China in particular have gained over the United States, they'd let that happen. I'm not sure. It's a long way away, and China doesn't yet, except with its deep sea fishing fleet, which is 6 times the size of our Navy, seem to be comfortable operating militarily at a distance like that. So it would take a real change in Chinese doctrine and tactics for them to do that. But I wouldn't be noticeably surprised were they to do that. And I certainly wouldn't be surprised were Russia to do that, because it wouldn't take much. It would just take relief coming at the time that they anticipated action, and the relief being caught in the action, and they're responding to that. That's all it would take. And I'm watching these submarine fleets really closely. No one else is. I don't even think the Pentagon is doing its duty with regard to watching these submarine fleets. And I have a hard time because I don't have enough contacts anymore to do it. But I'm watching the diesel submarines in particular. I'm fairly confident that my intelligence that the Chinese have several in the North Arabian Sea that are more or less tracking things. I've even heard rumors that one actually had a problem and had to surface within the sea screen of one of our carriers in the North Arabian Sea. And it almost resulted in a shoot. I don't know what they would have done. And I don't know what the problem was if they did have a problem. But I would be very surprised if there aren't a number of probably diesel electric submarines and maybe even others in that region tracking our ships. Unbeknownst, except maybe occasionally a active sonar or a passive sonar hit, and what was that? Where was that? 400 meters off the starboard bow. Okay. It's very difficult water to work in. It's probably the best submarine environment in the world in terms of convergence zones, temperatures, salinity, those sorts of things that make acoustic and passive and active sonar difficult to do, and therefore difficult to detect submarines. But I'd be very surprised if they weren't surveilling us. And if you can be surveilled, you can be killed. It's that simple. It's that simple. Have I told you the story about our exercises in the Pacific where a Los Angeles attack submarine would be in the exercise, and it would be playing the orange force or the red force, the enemy, in other words, and the exercise would be ongoing, and the submarine playing the enemy submarine would surface 400 or 500 meters off the port or starboard bow of the carrier or at the stern and say, bang, you're dead, over the guard channel, 243.0, I think it is. They just come up on guard and say, bang, you're dead. The embarked admiral and the captain commanding the carrier would be sorely embarrassed, but the American submarine playing the enemy would have surfaced and sent a radio transmission saying, bang, you're dead. They would have killed it because it got through all of their surface, subsurface, and air screen and got within torpedo firing range.
Every time Donald Trump is talking about the Strait of Hormuz, he said we don't need the strait because we are independent, we are producing everything here in the United States. But the reality is that the oil, this light oil that the United States produces is not good for producing diesel.
Right.
And that's why the United States is dependent on the Strait of Hormuz, one way or another. And that, and many people understand that. Those people who are involved in this market, they know what they're dealing with. But Donald Trump is trying to sell that to us, to these ordinary people who don't know, who don't know.
And you've got fertilizer, urea, you've got helium, I'm sure there are other things too, but those are the ones that have been mentioned as being substantial. And now the supply is completely cut off. And it's not cut off just because the ships can't transit the strait. It's cut off because we killed it. Iran killed it. Kill the facilities that manufacture it.
Here is, Larry, what Marco Rubio said today about what's going on between Iran and the United States.
That they are losing and lost revenue that they're not generating as a result of that. Now, we are in talks, and I say talks because talks with Iran are not like talks with Switzerland, okay? They're very different. They require the use of intermediaries, unfortunately. But there is the prospect before us, which could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, that for the first time, certainly in my memory, they have agreed to negotiate aspects of their nuclear program that just a month ago, or just a year ago, they were refusing to even mention, much less enter into discussions about. That is not a guarantee that ultimately it will lead to a deal that's acceptable to the Senate or acceptable to the American people. But we'll be able to engage them in a process to truly test the proposition of how far they're willing to go.
Why would they even worry about it, essentially, if Pakistan has guaranteed them whatever they need whenever they need it? I mean, okay, we'll negotiate. By the way, we're going to negotiate behind a missile that says Pakistan on it.
And here we had a report, Larry, on the Strait of Hormuz. This new organization, they call it Persian Gulf Strait Authority, PGSA. It says since the establishment of the PGSA, more than 300 non-Iranian ships have crossed the Strait of Hormuz in coordination with Iran and after paying tolls.
The income has been substantial.
Yeah.
Iran's income has been substantial, I'm told. I'm assuming Oman is getting a piece of it too. That may be the reason that people have said
they don't talk about it.
Yeah. they're too smart.
Yeah. Here in this report says that out of these ships, 42% were oil tankers, 27% bulk carriers, 11% container ships, 8% LNG ships, and 13% other types of vessels. And this is mostly the countries who were passing through the Strait of Hormuz, where these tankers were to UAE, Qatar, Iraq, and Kuwait. And this is, Larry, the reality of the Strait of Hormuz. I don't think that Donald Trump, under any conditions, can do anything about what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. Because you can call it toll, you can call it fee, but after all, it doesn't seem that the Iranian position can change on the strait. Together with Omani government may say nothing. They say, we're not part of this, we're not going to do anything. But after all, as you've mentioned, they're going to take their part, their share, and not talking about it.
Right. And I really don't think Iran wants to, and has demonstrated by the withholding of its ballistic missiles from targets that would destroy the world economy. I really don't think they want to. And I don't think China and Russia want to either. And they're advising. And Pakistan probably too. So this goes along with that. I think the strait would be open to commerce if we just go away. And Iran would make its toll fee, and we could go to the United Nations and, have a conversation about how we were going to either bless that or change it in some way that the United Nations might arbitrate, and Iran would accept and Oman would accept. I mean, there are peaceful ways to deal with this, and we could get the world back on a non-recessionary future. And Iran would probably go along with that without any problems, my guess, as would her partners. But we're the ones presenting the obstacle to doing it. because Trump has to look in some ways like he's been effective. The problem with that, to me, the challenge there is that increasingly he is doing the exact opposite. He's making himself look feckless, and he's making the American military establishment look feckless. And that to him is harmful, and politically it is. So I don't know where he's going. Like I said, at any moment he could lash out and we'd be in a different situation, which the Iranians would take care of quite adequately, I think, to our defeat, but which would lead to a lot worse global situation.
Thank you so much.
Best thing to do, Nima, would be to declare victory and leave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kofi, follow me.